Amen.
Amen. Members today pledge of allegiance will be led by Lillian Gover, senior of Wetumpka High School. She is the daughter of Michelle Jackson and guest of Speaker Pro Tem Pringle.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Speaker, Allman, Baker, Bedsole, Blackshear, Bolton, Boyd, Bracy, Brown, Butler, Carnes, Chestnut, Clark, Klaus, Cole, Collins, Colvin, Crawford, Daniels, Drummond, Dubose, Easterbrook, Ellis, England, Ensler, Estes, Faulkner, Fiddler, Fincher, Fort, Garrett, Gidley, Gavan, Givens, Gray, Hall, Hammett, Harbison, Harrison, Hassel, Hill, Holt, Jones, Hollis, Hulsey, Hurst, Ingram, Jackson, Jones, Keel, Kirkland, Kitchens, Lamb, Lawrence, Lee, Lipscomb, Lomax, Lovern, Marcus, McCampbell, McClammy, Mooney, Moore M, Moore P, Morris, Oliver, Paramore, Pascal, Pettis, Plump, Pringle, Rafferty, Ream, Reynolds, Rigsby, Robbins, Robertson, Rogers, Sellers, Sells, Shaver, Shaw, Shed, Shiree, Simpson, Smith, Sorrell, South, Stahagen, Standridge, Starn, Stringer, Stubbs, Tillman, Travis, Treadaway, Underwood, Wadsworth, Warren, Whit, Wharton, Wilcox, Wood D, Wood R, Woods, Yarborough.
Fifty-seven members have answered roll. The quorum is present, and the House is ready to transact business. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that leaves of absence be granted for absent members.
Are there any objections? Hearing no objections, leave of absence is granted to members. Chair further recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Mr. Speaker, I have a report.
House of Representatives, your Standing Committee on Rules begs leave to report that it has carefully examined the Journal of the House for the 25th Legislative Day and finds the same to be correct. Signed, Representative Joe Lovern, Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the reading of the journal at length for the 25th Legislative Day be dispensed with.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Chairman Lovern, let's take a break right there just a minute. The chair would like to recognize the gentleman from Cleveland, Representative Gidley, for a moment of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate this recognition of a moment of personal privilege for timely resolution.
Clerk, see the resolution.
House resolution by Representative Gidley.
Oh,
It's up to you. Read length or not. Please, that's good.
Whereas She Leads America, Alabama chapter headquartered in Birmingham, Alabama, promotes an exemplary professional and spiritual lifestyle honoring Christian women from every sphere of societal influence. The Alabama chapter was organized in October of 2022 to ignite, accelerate creativity, and bring forth faith-based solutions to modern-day challenges. Be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the Legislature of Alabama that we hereby salute She Leads America, Alabama chapter, for its positive influence and impact on the state by establishing role models who work toward uniting the men, women, and children of the state of Alabama in faith, and we support its goal to launch this God-fearing movement in every city in the state to unite, recognize, and honor godly women in leadership.
we'd like to recognize Beverly Gibson with She Leads America, the Alabama chapter. In addition to being the state director, She Leads America, Dr. Gibson is also the state director for Christians United in Israel. Let's give her a big hand for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chairman Lovern, you're further recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the rules be suspended for committees that have properly posted to meet while we're convened for the remainder of the session.
All those in favor of suspending rules, committees have the proper posting to meet while we're convened for the remainder of the session, say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The rules will be suspended. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Speaker Pro Tem Pringle, for a purpose of making announcements.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when we adjourn today, we leave the journal open so the clerk can complete his paperwork, and we reconvene on Wednesday, May 31st at 1 p.m. Wednesday, the 31st at 1.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion prevails. Clerk now receive reports, standing committee, and receive those throughout the day. The House is in now position to introduce bills and resolutions. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Mr. Speaker, I have a resolution.
Clerk, see the resolution.
House Resolution number 246 by the Rules Committee, a special order calendar.
Chairman Lovern, you're recognized.
Move for adoption.
Question for the body's adoption of the special order calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It has been adopted. Clerk, call first bill on special order calendar.
On page 64 of the calendar, House Bill number 175 with substitute by Representative Garrett relating to the taxpayer refund bill.
Chairman Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the recognition. We're beginning to go through our package of budget process the budget process bills today. The first one up is the bill that would create the tax rebate. The governor sent a bill over that had a $966 million rebate. The Senate passed a bill that reduced that rebate from $966 million to $275 million. The House is proposing we reestablish the rebate at $550 million, which is $210 for single, $420 for married individuals. The Speaker asks for the BIR.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Marengo, Representative McCampbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I got on some comfortable shoes today. Do you?
I don't think they're comfortable enough, probably.
Okay.
I can take them off, though. So.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I may have to get out of mine and grab me some tennis shoes. If I do, I'll bring you some also.
Thank you.
Now, this bill is the taxpayer refund bill that was actually in the governor's State of the State address. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And the total amount that was in the governor's State of the State address obligated, I guess, about $1 billion of the funding to refund taxpayers. I think it was up to $400 per individual, $800 per couple.
That's correct.
Okay. And the Senate cut it down, I think, to about $105 per individual, $210 per couple.
That's right.
And we are basically doubling that to about $220 and $440.
$210 and $420.
$210 and $420.
Right.
Okay. Now, who all will this go to? Who qualifies? Because as I read it, I thought there were some people that don't qualify to receive this money.
So this is technically an income, a refundable credit. It's a rebate, and a rebate you give to someone who's actually made a payment. So what this bill does, actually though, this bill will apply to any individual who filed a return, individual tax return, on or before October 17, 2022, for the taxable year that began on 2021. You have to be an Alabama resident, you can't be an estate or trust, and you cannot be claimed as an dependent on another return. Now, the key here is that it's a rebate which normally goes to people who pay taxes, but this actually applies to anybody who filed a tax return, and apparently there are a number of people, I don't know how many, it can't be that many, people who file a tax return when they don't have any, when they're not required to. I haven't met that person yet. But anybody who filed a tax return on or before October 17th, who's an Alabama resident and who is not a dependent on another return, would receive a rebate.
Okay, so someone that may have been on, just say, a state retirement, teacher's retirement, that had no additional income, would they be eligible to receive this only if they filed a tax?
If they filed a tax return.
But if they are not required to file a tax return and they didn't file a tax return?
They would not. And the reality is there are a number of retired people who are on defined contribution plans, and in the similar situation,
right.
Retired people who do not file tax returns, they would not receive the rebate because they would not really have paid any tax. So the rebate is a return of what you paid. That's the theory. I understand the point you're making. That's been a concern a lot of people have had, but the way this is presented and structured by the governor and then the Senate and now in our bill would be to maintain that structure.
So, and with that structure then, some of the people that are on these fixed incomes that probably have the greater need for and I tell somebody, in the Bible, God talked about the lady that gave the one mite and those that gave from their abundance of funding. God described that one that gave the one mite as giving the greatest.
Right.
You know, and I think when we design this stuff, we are designing it without honestly thinking a lot of time about where do these dollars have the greatest impact? Whose life can we honestly change? You know, thank God right now that I am as I am, because for my wife and I to receive $420, it's not going to change my life. It's not going to make any difference in my life. And by all means, I'm just saying I'm thankful for the life that I have. But the reality is that $420 will not make a difference in my life. But for that person that may be living from day to day on nothing but a Social Security retirement, that $210 or $420 will make a big difference. For that retired worker that is on a defined contribution plan that may not have any additional income, that money will make a difference. You know, so I don't know how I'm going to vote on this bill.
I certainly understand your point because, you know, when you look at the stimulus payments or the payments that were made on the rescue plan, there was an income cutoff there, right? So a lot of people didn't get checks there, and those were a lot more significant than this.
Right.
Again, a rebate by definition is a return of something somebody's paid. If you were to just mathematically, if you were to expand that pool, that $200 number would drop to who knows what, might be $75. I don't know. So at some point you dilute it. This in its purest sense is just a rebate. which
Yeah.
basically fixes it, addresses this population. I get your points, understand your points. I think that's been the reason a lot of people had a hesitation with the idea to begin with. But I believe this is going to cover this will cover 1.9 million tax filers in the state. So it's a lot of people will benefit from this, and certainly under the House bill, a lot more significantly than they would have under the Senate version.
And I agree. There are people that are going to benefit from it. I filed a tax return then, and I guess I'll be one of the benefactors of this. But I guess you do understand my point.
Absolutely, I do.
My point is, it is not I that, am really seeking this, but this is something that, with all the needs that we have in this state, I know the governor's office may not like hearing this, but maybe we could have looked another way. I understand that it's good politics, but oftentimes I don't want to deal with politics. I want to deal with the realities that we live in, and sadly enough, politics has become more of the reality that we are having to deal with rather than people politics and love politics. So that's what I'm focusing on as I address this, because I want to bring to fore those that are the least of these as we deal with
I know we'll chat more, but I'd like to just share one story with you that I thought was just ironic. Several years ago, my wife and I were in Florida, went into a jewelry store, and we just looked at jewelry, and there was a section with old coins. They'd make necklaces out of things they'd found in ships and things like that. They had one special section. I said, "What is this?" It was really cool, very expensive, but it was, that's a mite. That's the widow's mite. You've heard of the widow's mite.
Yeah.
And I sat there thinking, now there's something wrong that you can now take that widow's mite, which has that biblical meaning as you described. It's now in a very expensive necklace.
Yeah.
There's a sermon in there somewhere.
Hey, I'm going to go work on it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Madison, Representative Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Chairman Garrett, I know that there have been a lot of conversation back and forth about the rebate and among other things, and I know the gentleman from Marengo talked about some of his interest in things that funding as it relates to the Black Belt and the projects. But I would say I certainly appreciate you making the appropriate changes overall to the budget, whether it's this bill and other bills in the budget in general, to try to help restore some support from some of the areas that are certainly are underperforming in the budget when the budget came down from the Senate. So certainly appreciate that. But I do hope that as we look at long term and we study a lot of things, but there's always a president's out there and infrastructure out there, and I just want to dispel a lot of the myths and the rumors about urban versus rural, and that there are certain things that could fit in urban areas that don't fit in rural areas. I think that the things that if it could fit in an urban area, it can also fit in a rural area. As I look at institutions, our state independent institutions that I certainly support, the cybersecurity school, math and science school in Mobile, the art school in Jefferson County. And so I do think that the Black Belt of Alabama and in that region deserves an opportunity as well. I think when we're educating and trying to fill jobs and opportunity, I think that it works for all areas of Alabama. And so I think that as we study things, there are some things that warrant studying, and I certainly want to be sensitive to that, but there are certain things that just make sense. And I certainly think that giving the kids and those in that region an opportunity to have a specialized school or an independent school like we have in other parts of the state makes sense. But being able to allow students from all over the state of Alabama to be able to go to that region to study health sciences. And so I think it makes sense. I think it's a no-brainer. And so as we look forward, I certainly hope that yourself, I know that you're someone that focuses a lot on education from the not just the budget side, but you also look at it from the performance side and focusing on outcomes, and certainly hope that as we study this, which I certainly don't believe that we need to study it. I think it's just the right thing to do and it makes sense. But I think it's fair to say that I know the governor supported it. I know that our colleagues in the Senate and the House, and I just believe that it deserves an opportunity to have its day and have an opportunity. And so that as we look across the state of Alabama, the diversity of these independent schools and what they offer is certainly something that I think all of us should take into account and into consideration as we look long term. I think our institutions of higher education that focus a lot on healthcare and healthcare sciences, I think that's certainly a great feeder pattern for those institutions, but it gives more practical experience and opportunities for those students to be able to, we want them to stay in the state of Alabama, but it certainly builds a pipeline for them long term. Now, as it relates to the rebate itself, of course, you know, I've been a staunch advocate in opposition to the rebate from the very beginning, because I felt that we could spend dollars and make investments into other areas that'll go a whole lot further. And doing other policy discussions, not saying that this is something that we shouldn't be doing, but it's not certainly on the high priority list for me and others. But I do think that, you know, taking it from $100 to $210 is reasonable. I'm very disappointed that those individuals that are retired and those individuals that are the lower income level don't qualify for the rebate. I certainly, that's unfortunate. But I also think that there should have been some consideration as it relates to means testing the rebate, because there are individuals that make a certain amount of money that really don't need it. It'll go in a savings account, so it won't be really spent back into the economy. And so there are those that are upper middle class that will likely put it in a savings account or an investment account or pay on a credit card bill or something. And it doesn't necessarily yield the returns that we hoped for it to be able to yield for individuals that go out and purchase items. And so looking at a means test, I think makes sense. Then you're able to take it from the $210 level back up to a reasonable number if we mean tested it, but also have money left over for us to be able to redistribute and do other things within the budget that are certainly priorities, like the school, the health science school in the Black Belt, and looking at other investments on schools that are underperforming, making certain that we're resourcing and putting them on the trajectory to be successful, looking at early childhood education, making certain that access is not a barrier, and that we're looking at tax credits for our child care tax credit, things like that that are really going to help us grow and sustain the growth that we've been experiencing in certain areas of the state, but also expanding those opportunities to other areas within the state. And so I just think, for me, we just got to be more realistic about, if our intent is for these dollars to be redistributed in the economy, I think a person that's upper middle class, I don't necessarily know that it's going to solve that problem. But for those individuals that are at or below that level, they're certainly going to spend this money back into the economy, and we'll see some of that come back. With I know that the grocery tax is also on our agenda today to really have a vote on, and I'm certainly in support of that.
That's not on the agenda today.
It's not on the agenda?
No.
I thought when we left the committee,
it was in our committee
yesterday.
I think that's not for today.
Oh,
Yeah.
So we will deal with it eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. For some reason, I thought I saw it on there at the bottom of the agenda. But I'll still talk about the grocery tax.
We only have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah, and I think that the grocery tax will fly through this legislature. Don't you think? I think the speaker agrees with that as well. I didn't see a nod. And so, but you know, that's good that we're holding off for a little while to see what happens in the other chamber. And so that may be a good, I'm glad to know that. So this day will go by really quickly. And so I don't want to prolong the time, Mr. Chairman, and certainly going to be in support of this. I always support where we can be able to help families, but do think that sometimes when we're negotiating and talking about policy decisions, we all support the actual outcome, but how we get there is where we differ. And I think that this is just one of those times, but I think there's enough good that outweigh the bad that's warrant us my support, especially with the increase. I think $100 was a waste of time, anyone's time. And so I certainly appreciate your leadership and really increasing that. But looking at a means test is also give us an opportunity to be able to have a little bit more flexibility in doing some other creative things within the budget in making some investments in some other places. And the other bill that's on the calendar that deals with the infrastructure, I know we had a meeting earlier today to have a discussion about the distressed institutions within the state of Alabama. I certainly think that this is a good framework. It'll be a good framework, but we're certainly going to be dependent upon our treasurer to do our bidding and negotiating, and certainly he's going to do the best that he can. If we can arrive at a good place, I think we will. But I do think that it's important that we set up the infrastructure just in case, because we don't know what may happen, but we'll have it in place. And so I certainly appreciate that, but also appreciate your leadership, Speaker, and all the members of this chamber. I think we're at a good place. I think this will be a good day, and we'll get a lot done, and hopefully we'll be out here by midnight.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Chair, thanks, the gentleman. Question for the body's adoption of the BIR. Clerk will unlock machines, and the members will vote. Clerk will lock machine. Record the votes. 100 ayes, 0 nays. The BIR has been adopted. Chairman Garrett.
Move for, we need to adopt the sub. With the committee sub.
You care to explain the sub?
The substitute changes the amount of the original bill that was introduced by the governor from the $400 to $800 to the numbers we discussed, $210 for single, $420 for married filing jointly.
You've heard the explanation. Clerk will unlock the machine, and members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the votes. 100 ayes, 0 nays. The sub has been adopted. Chairman Garrett.
Read.
I think we have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
I've got an amendment that basically the only thing it does, I've only got one copy.
Clerk, see the amendment.
Amendment to House Bill number 175 by Representative Ingram.
Representative Ingram, explain your amendment.
So this amendment will delay it to November the 30th. Can you hear? To November the 30th, when we can get the tax money here instead of it going out of town. And the money will stay in our counties and our municipalities in the state. And then a lot of it will be internet, and we'll get 6% instead of the standard. So it's a better expenditure.
So as I understand your amendment, what you're saying, if the checks were to go out now, people might leave the state, spend the money out of state, whatever. If we give the checks, delay the payments until the Christmas time frame, there's more likely that money would stay in the state.
In our economy.
And we would get the revenue from the tax there. In addition, during that period of time, we'll be earning interest on the deposit, which is a significant amount of money.
So we'll gain up to about 10 million to 12 million on the interest. And also, in this amendment, it also is electronic when it's available. You know, the checks will be mailed out if we have to, but it's also electronic, and we'll save about 5 million on postage on that. So again, a total savings of gain of about 15 million.
Yeah, so we're delaying the amendment to another time of the year, more or less the Thanksgiving, Christmas season, when people would more likely need the money or need it. It would more likely be staying in the state. Plus, that time we would have enough interest earned to cover the cost of mailing, but also allowing a direct deposit option, which many people would prefer.
That's right.
I would consider this a friendly amendment. and would be happy to accept it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you've heard the explanation. The sponsor of the bill considers it a friendly amendment. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Rogers. Speak on the amendment.
That's right, that's right, that's right, that's right.
I wonder what the parameters are. I don't know what the parameters are. Wait, yeah.
Yes, sir.
It's on the amendment. What are the parameters on the amendment and for the bill? Give me some parameters on the bill. I mean, the total
On the
amount
amendment.
and what's the difference of bringing in for taxes?
Representative Rogers, the only thing it does is puts it to where it's sent out on November the 30th, and that we do a direct deposit when it's available or mail a check if it's not available. That's the only thing the amendment does, and it gets the money back into the general fund up to about $15 million we save on the postage and the interest. And it puts it back into your county and your municipality, back in the economy instead of it going out of town.
Okay. I was trying to get the direct parameters of it. What would it do by the delay? And if we get delayed, we're gonna make money. Can we increase the amount or something? If we delay, we gonna make more money on the back end.
Yeah. I think we're already doubling it. We're doing a good job now. I think leadership has brought you a good proposal. This is going to just make sure that money stays in your town.
Okay, I'm all for that. But what I'm throwing out there to you, see if we're gonna make more money. Maybe we come back and put more on the front end. That means we get more on the back end also.
Well, I think they're going to put it. It goes back into interest, and the savings goes back into the general fund. So it's something we can do with it next year, possibly. So we can look at that.
Okay, you see where I was coming from, don't you?
I see where you're coming from. Yes, sir.
But I'm okay with the amendments. But if we really were going to do it, we could do it. That means we could give out a little bit more, because we're going to make more. If we give out more, we make more.
That's right.
So but
we're going to keep this attrition this year, and then we do something with it next year.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
I find in a way it'll balance out, but I understand what you're trying to do now. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Madison, Leader Daniels.
So can you repeat that again? Because there was a lot of noise.
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to make certain that I understand the logic.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So what this does is it would be 90 days before the process would get mailed out anyway. This would just delay it to where it would be, come in November when people need it for Christmas, and it also would be direct deposit when it was available. If it wasn't direct deposit, wasn't available, then it would be mailed out. The check would be mailed out, because it's about $5 million in postage on that. So with the interest that we would save on that is something that we could put back into the general fund. It would be close to that anyway, than when it would mail out anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now go over your rationale for sending it out in November.
Well, so a lot of people are going out of town. Our beaches are a lot smaller than Florida's beaches, so if they go out of town now and they spend it, then we don't get, your counties and your municipalities don't get the revenue off of that, and the state doesn't. So if we were to wait until November, when everybody needs the money around December and Thanksgiving to travel, to go to grandmama's house or whatever, then that money is going to stay in our state.
And what make you believe that?
Well, I'm just saying, it's just...
Because that's the time when it's Christmas shopping. Most people, if it's for Christmas shopping, we going to where the deals are.
That's right.
You don't have that many malls and places in the state of Alabama where we could get those real good deals. So I'm heading somewhere out, they got larger malls, discount malls, and outside of Alabama. So there's no guarantee that that's what's going to happen, and especially if it's around Christmas times, and if people want to use that money to purchase toys, they are going to the places that will have a larger stock of toys, which we normally
Like
don't
Amazon.
have
Like
in the
Amazon.
state of Alabama.
So like Amazon, if they ordered on Amazon, and we get 6%.
But they ain't gonna be
instead of-
ordering. They like to go out and touch stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
They like to go out and touch. Grandmama and them gonna touch it before they buy it. So I don't think that's a good rationale per se. But if that's what you want to use and you feel good about it, because there's no guarantees, because people are always looking for a deal.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what they. Now I understand you talk about if they were to get it off the internet, that would be good, and then we could share those taxes there.
That's right.
But there's no guarantee. I would think that now, during the summertime, people have a tendency, those that's in that upper middle income bracket, and they'll have a tendency to go out someplace and spend it during the summertime. But we're going to be closer to home during this time, and we stand people who are not in a certain income bracket stand a greater chance of spending it at home during these months than looking for that deal for Christmas or the holiday season. Because most people are looking for that extra deal and make their bucks go farther then. But, if that's what we want to use, that's okay. But I promise you can't find no data to back that up. But it's all right.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Chair thanks the lady. The question for the body now is the adoption of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes, 96 ayes, 2 nays. The amendment has been adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Chairman Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now move for final passage.
That is question for the body is final passage of HB 175. Clerk will unlock the machine so members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes, 101 ayes, 0 nays. HB 175 has passed. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 65 of the calendar, House Bill number 85 by Senator Orr relating to public education employees.
I want to just carry this over. Can I carry this over? Can I carry this to the end, maybe? Okay. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to carry this to the end, please. This bill.
Sponsors request to carry it over to the call of the chair. All in favor is aye. Any opposed? It has been carried over. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 65 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 267 by Senator Chasteen relating to athletic trainers.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield to Representative Baker, if that's possible.
That is possible. Chair recognizes the gentleman that's come. Yes, Chairman Baker.
Thank you so much for the recognition, Mr. Speaker. Members, just a summary in regards to this athletic trainer bill. This would create the Athletic Trainer Secondary School Incentive Program. This would provide for grants to local boards of education that meet certain requirements related to the use of athletic trainers in rural 1A, 2A, 3A, and Title I secondary schools. This would also authorize the Alabama Board of Athletic Trainers to adopt rules to administer the incentive program and the grant application process. This would also require that grants issued would be for the incentive program to be provided as stipends to the qualifying athletic trainers, and then finally to limit each secondary school and athletic trainer to 1 grant per school year. With that then, Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to, I move for adoption of the BR.
That is question for the body is adoption of the BIR. Clerk will unlock machines and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes, 101 ayes, 0 nays. The BR has been adopted. Chairman Baker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I would state that on this does allow then that each grant would be for no more than $7,500. The applications would be made by the local school boards. This would be capped at $2 million per school year. Well, with that then, I would entertain any questions or move for final passage of the bill.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Moore.
I can talk now. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, most times when we bring in people of this sort, trainers, coaches in the school, most time they require to be able to teach. So would that requirement be in the job description that they have to teach in order to work in the school system?
No, that would not be the case. This really would be more so what I have seen in the schools. Now, that would not, as I understand, that would not necessarily forbid such what you're suggesting.
No, you know, most times, like even our coaches, when they come in, even though I know some school systems get around it, the requirement from the state is that they also be a teacher in the system. And since this is, with this new education, a recruiting of trainers for these school systems, we need to make sure that the state won't require that they also be a teacher in order to work in that environment.
Right. Now, I would I need to point out something within the bill.
Okay.
In regards to that. So this does state that the athletic trainer then provides that the athletic training services in one of the following manners. So it could be, as you've suggested, an employee of the local school board. That's
Right.
one avenue. Another avenue that they would be an employee of the health care facility that's providing the athletic trainer.
Okay.
Another would be a participant of a third party, such as like a sports medicine entity.
Okay.
Yes, that happens at a lot of the schools where nearby sports medicine
But see,
entities.
no, it don't happen in a lot of our schools. We've never been able to get around that. Even though I know in some school systems, they don't have to be teachers. They could be employed like, you know, in some other area, even with the coaches. But in our schools, they adhere, and the state make them adhere to the fact that that person has to be an educator in that building. So I'm glad you got those stipulations, because that hurts our recruitment for coaches also working in the school system. And that's something we need to take care of, that if you're a basketball, football, volleyball, whatever coach, you shouldn't have to be tied to being an educator in the system, period. Because I know, like in Birmingham, some of our high school coaches you got to be an educator somewhere, so they teach either in the middle school or the elementary school and then leave in the afternoon in order to perform their coaching duties. So that's something that we need to look at, and I think our recruitment, even on coming across the best coaches, will be helped if we can come up with that also.
Certainly.
So I'm glad you had some options there for the trainer.
Right.
Because that has stopped us from getting the best and the brightest that's out there, because we do have coaches that might be working for another facility, but they would be a much better coach. To give you an example, in one of my schools, because they didn't have a certified someone that could coach, they just picked up the science teacher. Now, over time, he's been doing it for so long, he's gone back and got some continuing education programs on coaching. But when they first put him in that position, he was just a science teacher.
Right.
Because they couldn't recruit anybody else because of that restriction that they had to be an educator somewhere in that school system before they could coach. So I appreciate you having that in the bill, because we got so many calendars out here today that it's hard for us to pick up all the bills that's on all these various calendars we got today. But I'm glad you read that part for me. And if we could, I guess, expand on that eventually and look at it for coaches also, I would appreciate it.
Certainly. And I think that is the intent, maybe to work towards expanding the program if possible.
Right, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Hale, Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Gentleman Leah.
Certainly.
I just wanted to come up and just compliment you for the outlook in dealing with bringing this bill forward. I have worked with the Coach Safely Act that has been put in place previously, and I have really become aware of how important having quality, properly trained athletic trainers are. It deals not only so with the athlete, but it's also making sure mental health awareness and stuff like that. A lot of things that sometimes coaches kind of take for granted, oh, he just can't do it or got problems. But this have someone in place who understands the proper science, understands the things that's going on with an athlete, that really deals with not only just what we talk about, physical safety, but also the mental safety of a student. So I just thank you for making this fund and bringing this available.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Morgan, Chairman Collins.
Thank you for the recognition. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I asked for permission for leave of the House for education policy to meet in room 418 to just do one bill, Senate Bill 176 at 10 o'clock.
And all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The permission is granted.
Thank you. I support your bill as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Collins.
Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a lot of calendars floating. And I don't have, I have a stack that I went through, but it's not the right stack because we're on another stack. So tell me exactly what you're doing.
Okay, this is a athletic trainer bill. This would allow for, it's meant to be really an attempt to recruit and also retain athletic trainers. This is with the intent of student safety, particularly those that are involved in sporting activities.
Sure.
And so it's where some of these schools, particularly your rural schools and your smaller schools, such as 1A, 2A, and 3A, these are schools that do not necessarily have the capability to afford or maybe secure a athletic trainer. So this by no means.
So what are we doing?
Salary. This simply provides some money that hopefully would be coupled with local dollars to be able to allow some of these schools to be able to have an athletic trainer in place. You do have entities. It could be.
So when I read the title, it says to provide grants to local school boards to meet certain requirements related to use of athletic training in rural and Title I secondary schools. So what are these grants for?
This would be for an athletic trainer.
To train individuals?
No, not necessarily to. Once again, if I might direct you, have you got the bill in front of you? Or
Listen now, you know I'm old school, and this computer stuff.
Okay, I got you.
It's a challenge for me to get to where I need to be.
If you allow me to read, it's really the same thing I just read just a moment ago to Representative Moore, and on this. But not that you have this with, but if you do, then it's on page 3. This will be line 82.
Hold up, on page 3.
Page 3.
Page 3. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. See, when you old school and you don't understand this, that the screen just leaves you. Okay, page 3. Which line?
I was going to say 82, but let's bump up just a little bit to line 79. The last two words there on 79, the athletic trainer provider. And so this would be the athletic training services in one of the following manners. So it'd be 3 ways that a person.
Stop.
Okay.
Did you say each grant, is that where you are? Each grant shall provide no more than $7,500. Is that where you are?
No, I'm not there. This would be, if I actually captured the entire sentence, I could go back on that. Any athletic training services provided by the athletic trainer may be counted towards the required hours, provided that the athletic trainer provides the athletic training services in one of the following manners. So there's 3.
I don't see where you are.
Okay.
I'm on page 3, section 2B, line 79, and I don't get the same information. All right, so that puts me on page 4. I'm down. Okay, so in it, What I'm saying, what you are doing is providing grants for them to be able to hire or.
Do you want me to jump in? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. This would provide some money. Now, most of these systems aren't going to be able to get a person that would come in and be an athletic trainer for $7,500. But it's where this money can be coupled with the local dollars, but this would help incentivize local school systems. These smaller schools that don't have an athletic trainer at the sporting events and practices and things like that, this would at least allow those schools. There's one of three ways. One would be through the actual local school board. Another would be through a health care facility. A third would be through a third-party sports medicine entity.
And that's the part that I was looking for, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't just putting individuals out there that are interested in just helping students or being a volunteer who may not have the training.
Right.
So you're specifying that they are trained, they are professionals in this area, and those professionals either come from the school board or from a healthcare facility or from a sports medicine program.
Right.
Does that mean that individual would have, if they, from all of these, they would have been degreed or have met the qualifications for being an athletic trainer?
You ask a very good question. So this is part of it maybe that's not been yet expressed on the bill. The grant, the administrator would be through the athletic training board for the state. So they are the ones that are the administrator. So obviously they want to police and make sure that they have then adequately prepared athletic trainers. So as these applications come in from a local school board for a grant, then they are the ones then that would be the one that determines whether it maybe merits or determines that it meets the requirements for that grant. They can be up to $7,500. Doesn't mean that every school board would get that.
But we all know the salary for an athletic trainer is a lot more than $7,500.
Yeah, this is simply meant to try to help incentivize. So this is not meant to cover the cost. Of that. That's not the intent. The intent is to help stimulate some of these local school boards to couple their dollars with this, with the intent that hopefully they would have. Now, these athletic trainers, they're not necessarily at the school all day and any of that. They're not necessarily employees of the school or the school board. They might be or could be, but they may simply be the third-party entity, a sports entity and such. It could be through a local hospital that they are providing this person, but they must have at least 25 hours of service or more per week that they're providing. 25 hours of service.
So that would include practice as well as the games.
Well, it could be. It could be multiple. It could be even on such as, having been a former football coach, on Saturdays as after a Friday night ball game, then we had athletes that might have been injured from the day of previous night's game then, that they're having treatment provided, and there would be this third party then, sports medicine entity that was providing a trainer that would come in and help deal with some of those injuries. So it's not just necessarily during the school days or practices. It could be even just such as a Saturday over the weekend or such, where injuries are also being tended to or dealt with.
Well, I think it's an excellent program. I just think that we need to, I believe you're making sure that we're having trained, educated, professional individuals that will be performing.
Indeed, and you make a good point. So it's not just the local board applying for the money. This is going through the athletic trainer board that would be the ones then that would be ultimately making decisions as to the awards made towards this grant.
Athletic board, but the school system must apply to the board. Correct.
The local school board must, right, and then it would be up. The superintendent does have responsibility in regards to this to see to it that the conditions are being met, such as the hours being performed, and also in regards to, I guess, the proficiency of that athletic trainer.
How many systems do we know of our school systems that are deficit in this area?
That's a great question. I do not have the data for that in regards to This would apply to all the rural 1A, 2A, 3A schools plus Title I schools. And I do not have any data on that information as to how many might be having some services provided at this point in time or some that have none whatsoever. I don't have that information.
So you're saying presently today in our school systems, we have schools that do not have the services of an athletic.
Some don't have, yeah, there would be some that possibly don't have any services provided, and then others that have maybe meager and not necessarily, I mean, they would hope there might be more adequate hours provided to their school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes this lady from Macon, Representative Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand. What, do we have a ceiling amount for these athletic trainers?
There would be a cap of $2 million annually on this for the stipend program. Each grant could be up to $7,500.
7,500. 2 million. And when is this effective?
I believe it is a year from now. Let me look on that real quick. All right, it's beginning with the 24-25 school years. So one year removed then. So not next school year, not the 23-24 school year, but 24-25 school year.
Okay, so it will be in next year's budget. We didn't have to worry about this in this year's budget.
Well, it is. It's included within the budget. I mean, for this next fiscal year.
Okay, starting October of 23.
That's my understanding. There's been $300,000 that was placed in the budget as it came out of the Senate for this athletic trainer program.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very familiar with the program, and I support it 1,000%.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, UAB is totally involved with this, and they called me, like, really tell you to come support you 1,000% because of the fact that Drew Ferguson and all that group, I met with them earlier. What it really also does is an expansion program out to the rural areas. All right, most of the cities is in the cities already. Birmingham has it. A lot of cities already doing it.
Right.
What you're doing is creating an avenue where it can be for other areas, which is fantastic. Because what they do is that if a kid is playing basketball or football, sometimes they have the facility right there at the game, and the kid gets hurt with a knee or a head injury at the game. He could be taken care of almost immediately right there and get them to Children's Hospital or another hospital to be treated. Right. They help the numerous young athletes be able to continue playing because they're so quick on the field. They even attend some youth games, youth league games when there's a big thing going on. So it's a fantastic program. And I met with them earlier on, been for years when they first started it. It's great because it has saved some kids' lives because they had practice sometime when they had practice with the kids when it was hot. They had one kid that got hot that they had from hypothermia, but they had the ice packs there to treat that kid, save that kid's life.
Right.
So what you got to doing is got to start a program really. It should be funded at a higher level, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start a program to expand it to some rural areas, which they should have. So I want to tell you that it's a fantastic bill. It saves some kids' lives, and you got people right there on the spot to help train them. And then if they can't do it, they transfer them to a lot of them can to the clinic, to the UAB they have for youth athletics. And it probably saved a lot of kids' lives and got them back playing again. So thank you for the bill. It's a bill that it should be expanded. And that's what you're doing.
That is the intent, so thank you so
That's
much.
the expanded program.
Right.
So they told me to get on that microphone and tell them what's going on. We started it. I was there when it first got started, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Calhoun, Representative Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, member of the House. Tell me, is all the schools in Alabama going to be eligible for this?
No, this is, the bill specifies that this would be for the rural 1A, 2A, 3A schools, and there would be such a list that would be provided to the schools across the state if this bill moves forward, and also any Title I schools. I would also just make a notation that a number of these higher classification schools, 4A and above, all the way up to 7A, many of these schools already have athletic trainers that are provided, whether it be through local hospitals, sports medicine entities, or it could even be the school themselves that are providing that. So a number of these larger schools have this. So this is intended to help jumpstart a lot of these smaller rural schools and towards then trying to acquire a athletic trainer to provide services.
Yeah. I got a grandson. He's supposed to graduate 1st of December from Alabama, and he's majoring in athletic training.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read this and looked at it, it could be a plus.
Yeah.
Especially, he got to be interested in an athletic trainer as playing football.
Mm-hmm.
He had a scholarship in Missouri to start with, and kept having viruses, and they quarantined him and all, so he got tired of that after 2 years.
All right.
But he would get hurt. He got hurt, and him and the doctors got to be good friends, so he got all interested in it. And he's pretty good at it. So
Yeah, good.
I told him about this, that
Right.
it was coming up. So it's a good opportunity for him.
Certainly.
On down the road, if not around his home there, out in the rural area, like you said.
Right.
Everything. So I'm glad we got it. We'll see where it goes.
Right. Thank you so much.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Question for the body now is final passage of SB 267. Clerk will unlock machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote, 99 ayes, 0 nays. SB 267 has passed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, members of the body.
Thank the gentleman. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 76 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 175 with substitute by Senator Orr relating to the Reengage Alabama Grant Program.
Thank you
Representative
for the
Baker.
recognition, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a bill. This bill would establish a new grant program to assist Alabama residents in earning short-term credentials that would lead to more in-demand career opportunities. Several things that are part of this bill. This would be that it does allow for the repeal of the currently existing Alabama Apprenticeship Tax Credit Act. It also would allow that this would be channeled through the Alabama Community College system. And this would be where they are working in collaboration with the regional workforce development councils and also trying to help steer these students in regards to the in-demand jobs. I would ask at this time then, I'll ask for the adoption of the BR.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since I don't have a copy, but trying to get a copy of these bills on this calendar, let me ask you something, because just in the little summary, it talks about adult learners to return to college. But what about adult learners that might need high school? Is there any kind of program to do that we could put in place to encourage them to go and get their GED and then go into some kind of training? Because a lot need that first and then could get into some of the training programs, especially that our two-year colleges might have.
Actually, That was in the original bill. This
Okay.
bill has been subbed out of the Senate.
Okay.
And so that actually adult learners isn't a part of this bill.
Okay. It's not a part
It's
of
not a
this
part of this bill,
bill.
although it may be in the
But
summary
in this,
there.
in this 175,
It is.
it says
This is
engage
sub-
Alabama grant program established to provide financial incentives for adult learners.
Yeah, I can't really speak to that. That was a part of the original Re-engage Alabama Act. That was
And
a
this
part
is
of the
not
original-
what this bill is about?
It has morphed, it has changed. This has become a short-term
So we
credential
needed
bill.
copies of these bills before they hit the floor, so we would have a better understanding of what the bills are about? Because I've gone there trying to print them off now, but we was just given this calendar this morning with no copies of the bill.
Right.
Yeah, so, because it says on here for adult learners, so I don't know what's in the bill, but I know that the bill room is trying to print them off so that we can have copies to understand about it. So exactly what does your bill do? Since it's not about adult learners.
This is about short-term credentials. So this would be, so whether it be adult learners or whether it be then those that are coming out of the high school or such, or in the high school.
Or somebody that hadn't finished high school.
Correct.
Would it cover them too?
Well, this could be, this could be towards that.
And they
right.
just need additional tooling to be able to qualify for the demands that's out there.
Right. So, so this is attempting to fill a need there to provide those, going back to adult learners, whether it be adult learners, whether it be students that maybe might have started a little bit dabbled or such. So this is intended to try to help encourage, incentivize, those students then.
Okay, that's good, but I
towards
just,
achieving- right.
So, it would be nice if these little summaries would be a little more accurate so that we would know what the bill is about. And then it also would be good to have the bills available prior to the calendars being given to us or posted so that we'll be able to scan them and have a better understanding what they are about for those of us that like to read to figure out what's going on. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Morgan, Leader Stat Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, I want to thank you for bringing this and filling the need that needs to be filled.
Thank you so
sir.
much. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Macon, Representative Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Sure.
Okay, I understood you to say that these grants, the funding will be with the community colleges.
That is correct.
So, and did I hear you say short-term?
Short-term credentials, right. So this would be those things that might be completed, a credential completed in 16 weeks or less.
Okay, because when
And
I looked on here, it says obtain degrees. And those are not really degrees that they're going to get. It's just certifications. You're saying
Credentials. Now, where are you seeing degrees?
On this sheet.
Okay. Now, I think that once again that goes back to what was the original bill. This is now a sub that came out. What came out of the Senate then? This is a sub that was adopted in our House Budget Committee, and so that is not what's. That's not. That's
so
a different.
It obtains credentials.
Credentials. So this bill is not involving the degrees as the original bill stated, and involved more so a focus towards adult learners. This bill is transitioned into a sub that now is really focused on short-term credentials.
Okay. The next thing, is it income-based?
No, this is not.
It's not income-based. Anybody can receive these funds.
Would be, well, they do have, the eligible students would have requirements. They would make application through the Alabama Community College system.
Okay.
And they do have obligations with this. So they could receive up to $4,500 with a grant.
$4,500, okay.
Right. And it would be where prior to receiving the grant, the eligible student would first have to make application for such as the FAFSA, that would be the free application for federal student aid, and any other types of assistance programs out there. They must have completed that application or applications thereof first.
Okay.
So exhausting those opportunities first, and then that would position them potentially to be an applicant then.
So
for
whatever, after the student receives the award, if there's anything left in their unmet need, then they can use this for that amount.
Right, that's correct. That award could be up to that amount then up to the $4,500. And it'd be where the student would have an obligation. I will step back just a moment and mention this. It was done for these short credentials at 16 weeks because it's where Pell Grants then would not be able to kick in until after 16 weeks. And so for that, these students then would be able then to move forward with a Pell Grant as well thereafter. But the other part with this is that I lost my train of thought on that, so I'll let you defer to the next question then.
No, that was it. I was really concerned about the income base, and if you're saying that it's going to have to, it will be in a student's package, and whatever the unmet need is, that will do it. I was wondering, is it possible that it could also replace the student's contribution on that war?
That I don't know that in reading the bill, I don't know that is really a part of the bill. Let me share this, and this is helping me on my thought that I recaptured my thought just a moment ago, and that is that the award of this amount then for the $4,500, then half of this would be after the student has begun their first day of classes. So within the first 5 days of beginning class, then the half of that money then would be provided to the community college system where they are enrolled in this short-term credential, for this short-term credential. And then upon completion, then the other half, within 5 days after the completion of that, then that's when the other half would be then provided to that community college system, providing the course or courses. So that's a part of it I did want to make mention on that. If the student fails to complete, then they are at an obligation to fulfill any remaining debts unsatisfied by that.
Okay, I was really just thinking of the whole financial picture, trying to see what that student actually qualify, if they would qualify for Pell based on maybe a half-time enrollment status, then they could get all that money that's out there. But if not, it's going to really kind of mess them up when you really look at the big picture of that financial award that they're going to get. So, all right, I think you answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chair thanks the lady. The chair would like to recognize in the gallery the family of Chairman Garrett, his mother-in-law Peggy Sessions, wife Carol Garrett, and son John Garrett. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you for being with us today. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Shaw. Be the fourth person to speak on the BR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My degree is in public administration, but I've spent 30 years in technology, and it started with certifications like this, so this is a great bill, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chair thanks the gentleman. The question for the body now is the adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock the machine, and the members will vote.
Thank you.
Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 101 ayes, 0 nays. The BR has been adopted. Chairman Baker.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I move for final passage, I would state on this bill does have a sunset of 4 years, so unless extended then, this would sunset December 31 of 2028. Did want to make mention of that, and also it does have a $7 million annual cap as well on that. With that, I would move for final.
And I'm showing a sub.
Oh, okay, thank I make a motion then to adopt the sub.
Is that what the sub does?
Right. Well, that's elements of the sub that I've just described. So the sub, what that does, that makes this then a bill for short-term credentials, unlike the original bill that was really focused more on adult learners that did involve degrees as well as credentials.
Okay, very good. I got some lights on. Do you want to speak on the sub or the bill? Sub, AJ, sub or the bill? Okay.
Sunsets right in 2028.
Question for the body now is passage of the sub. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 101 ayes, 0 nays. The sub has been adopted. Chairman Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With that, then, I would entertain any questions on the sub. Once again, the bill did change in some substance, and the original bill was more focused on adult learners that involve both credentials and degrees. This bill is more focused exclusively, really, on the short-term credentials. Well, with that, then, I would entertain any questions or move for final passage.
Chairman, recognize the gentleman from Ringo, Representative McCampbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Will the gentleman yield?
Certainly.
First of all, I'm in support of this program and of the idea behind this program and the idea behind this project. My question is, as I look at this, I see it's going to be basically additional funding to the Alabama Community College system. Now, how are these funds going to be dispersed? What's going to be the holding agency of these funds?
Great question. The Alabama Community College system would be the entity at large, the system, that would basically promulgate all the rules and adoption and procedures. That would be that's listed on page 6 of the bill, section 5. The entire section right there states they shall do all the following: adopt any rules necessary to implement, administer. It goes through some other items there. I'll be glad to go through those others if you desire, but they would be the administrator.
Okay.
The Alabama Community College system.
So the Alabama Community College system will be the administrator of it. What's going to be our understanding of a return in terms of making sure how they are administering these funds?
Okay, very, very good. You asked some really good questions there. This will be on page 5, towards the latter part of the bill, section 8. This does state that the Alabama Community College system shall provide an annual report, and this would be to the chairs of both the House Ways and Means Education Committee and the chair of the Senate Finance, Taxation, Education Committee, to account for the use of the funds and the effectiveness of the grant program.
Okay. Now, one of the things that the Alabama Community College and a lot of the agencies will do is they'll provide us just a humongous report that's probably a year old by the time we get them. When we are expending funds as legislators, we are not just talking about district legislators. We are Alabama representatives. And we are the ones that are providing the funds for these agencies and for these programs. And it is incumbent upon us to make sure these programs get the information back to us so that we can look at it in a timely manner, that it's not lost in some large thing, because this is a specific program that needs to be identified specifically. Because in 2015, we set up this separate board for the community college system so that this separate board could at least get things moving in a manner that is quick. I'm probably the only Democrat that voted for that particular change. Now I'm starting to recant and believe I made a mistake. And I'm willing to stand here and say when I made a mistake, because now we have no accountability from that agency. They are not sending things back in a timely manner, and we are just sitting here continuing to give them money without asking them to give us some doggone accountability for what they do. You know, I don't know how long we are going to keep doing this, how long we are going to keep allowing the political minds to blind us to what we are down here to do. And what we are down here to do are things for all the people of the state of Alabama. And we can no longer allow agencies to not be fully accountable to those of us that are actually sending the money out. We can keep sitting here doing the things that we are doing simply because it's politically expedient, and we are failing the people of the state of Alabama that we are down here to represent. So I'm saying to all these agencies, you all need to start coming to us and giving us the information we ask for. Because if I have to vote no on every budget until we start getting it, I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to start doing it. And it's not because I don't believe the agencies have good intentions. It's because I believe nobody is demanding that they have accountability to us. That's where I'm standing. That's why I'm here. That's why, this is a great program. But what accountability, I saw that. We got a report coming in about a year's time that's going to tell us all about it. How many reports have we had coming in a year's time that we haven't gotten? I'm sure you're thinking the same thing I'm thinking. We haven't gotten them. People, we have not gotten them. We haven't gotten them. We have not gotten them. And you all can sit here and keep doing this without giving us the tools that we need to honestly decide whether or not what we are doing is worth what we are spending on it. Now, one of the things that you all need to understand is between the supplemental in the ETF and the ETF itself, the community college system is going to get over $1 billion. Now, are you not going to hold a system accountable for how they are using that money? Are we just going to allow it to keep being something we pass through and they not tell us how they are spending every penny, not just one penny, every penny? If we do that, we are failing the people we are down here to represent. And I don't care to keep failing those people. So, I'm okay with this project, but I want every member in here to join me in demanding that this project and every other project, that we have them and we don't have them lost in some huge thing. Every project should have its own individual report coming to us. Every one of them. So, I don't know that I'm not going to come back and have this same heartburn again, but I'm going to keep screaming it from the top of the mountain until somebody understands we have got to be held accountable. And since we've got to be held accountable, the people that are bringing that we are giving this money to, we have got to hold them accountable. Okay? If you aren't with me, just say you aren't with me. Tell me you don't want to hold them accountable.
No, you've been quite passionate in your messaging, I fully concur and share and embrace your pursuit for accountability. That's something I think as a body that we continue to pursue and do. It's been my great pleasure to serve under some great leaders in regards on the Budget Committee, which I served, from Chairman Garrett and then previous Chairman Bill Poole, in which there's been a strong desire and quest for accountability. Some of those measures include things such as sunsets to ensure, so we want to see how's this working, what's our return on investment, how's this working, and that way we become the ones that determine whether it continues or not or whether it goes away. So I think that's very important. Having the reports, annual reports, just not, 5-year report, but annual reports, so we can hopefully have some type of measurement of what's going on. So I think there is that quest pursuit. I share and embrace that same passion that you have for accountability.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Clark, Representative Jackson.
Thank you. I just want to commend my brother for that passion of message that he brought forth. I was one that voted against it. I thought it was a bad idea to have a separate community college trustee board. And then when you saw the people that they appointed, then you knew what was going on. It's a vacuum cleaner, pulling all in funds in, and where are they going? People that need it the most get nothing. Now, I'm not against new programs, but they sit over there and come up with these ideas and how they're going to bring money into somebody's their friends and their family members, and don't think about the vast majority of how these funds are going to be expenditures for the state. We invest in, this is the first big budget of education. And the brother said $1 billion in community college. A great idea for a program, and 4 years sunset. Who done got lost in the process in 4 years? How much money is this program going to cost? And who's allowed and who is available for applying for this program? See, this is a great need, but then are these needs going to be fulfilled? I'm educated, and you're educated, you coached. You know what that's all about. And it's one of the biggest rackets in the state. 23 years in public education, public schools, K-12 schools, and 10 years in post-secondary. And that's a vast difference in post-secondary and K-12. All the money is going to post-secondary. K-12 is struggling. Rural Alabama is hurting because they are not getting the needs met that need to be met. We can't even hire teachers, being told. Tell us again, you've been all over the place bouncing around with, what does this program actually does? What does it do?
This would help to incentivize potential eligible students for short-term credentialing.
Okay, what makes one eligible for this? It's going to certify people. Well, how do you get certified? What makes you eligible?
It would be an application that would be...
You apply, you have to be a high school, a non-traditional student, or what?
That is not contained in the bill. That's something that the rules for the application, that would be established by the Alabama Community College system.
Oh, okay. Now, your substitute bill, fine-tune it a little bit from adult learning to include mostly anyone? Is that what your substitute did?
The original bill actually, was quite a bit different in several ways. This was one. It had for students that might have, it was really more on a basis of students that might have already achieved some hours in such as either the community college system, it could be at a 4-year institution, and so whether it be, so a student that may have up to 36 hours then would qualify for some money towards trying to get back on a path back in school to try to get a credential at a community college system. I believe it was if they had 72 hours then working towards then a higher degree, that this would allow those students an opportunity to try to get back on a path to get them on track to complete that degree. So it's a little bit different bill, the original bill, from what this bill morphed into. This bill is really much more focused on short-term credentials.
Okay, just certifying people for what?
For the various types of jobs out there that requires just a credential, not necessarily a 4-year degree.
Anything that you have to have a certificate in, not a degree. So this is what this
That's
program
right. So
does.
the focus has been refined in that, and part of this goes in. Very privileged to serve as part of the Alabama Workforce Council.
Okay.
And so this is something that is intended is that this would help students to recognize what these in-demand jobs are, and not just pursue a credential in just any field, but
You
where
you would target the areas that are needed to get certified in these particular areas. 18 weeks, 2 semesters is what you were talking about for certification?
Say that again.
18 weeks or 2 semesters is what you're talking about?
16 weeks.
16 weeks.
So the credential programs that would qualify that the student would be engaged in, to qualify, these would have to be, at least 16, well, it would be at least for the 16 weeks or less then for that credential.
But they have already had some college hours before they can apply.
That was the previous bill. So now you've got me on two different.
Okay, all right. I've been listening to all this. You've been all over the place, so I'm trying to bring it into focus. So
I was not even a part of the previous bill whatsoever. That was up in the Senate. So the bill, as it transitioned to the House, it was substituted, and so it's gone in a new direction.
So we're on the substitute. This is the bill that we're going to place.
That is correct.
And I applaud your efforts here because there's a great need. Certification in areas that people need to be certified in, but we got to target those areas and get those training, those jobs in the here. We got to get the people certified for those jobs, and this is hopefully that'll open up the workforce in Alabama. I appreciate that, but like my colleague said, we got to follow the money. That's what you got to follow, and if they don't give us a report, how we gonna follow it?
Right.
Good bill. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Clark.
Okay, thank you. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Baker, I'll be brief. I agree with the bill, support the bill. Did you say it sunsets in 4 years, 5 years?
Right. It does not begin. Let me get the dates real quick because I'm on track with this. Right. So the actual grants provided under this bill, this article, would begin January 1, 2024. And then they would sunset then on December 31st, 2028, so a period of 4 years.
So an individual would be able to obtain a grant in 1 year, but they would also be eligible to get another grant within a year's time?
Right, that's my understanding on that.
So is there a maximum number of grants that someone can get through this program is my question.
That's not within the bill as I read the bill on this. Now, it is where that the community college system does, adopt the rules and implementation
and so
of this.
the rules that a maximum number of grants that could be obtained could be established in the rules?
Possibly.
Or does that need to be in the bill?
Let me scan back just real quick to make sure that I'm trying to provide you with accurate information on that.
I got a couple of friends who years ago were professional students, Representative Baker. They love going to school, and they're a whole lot smarter than I am. I would just hope
it does
that...
state, just one item on here, and I don't know that this actually addresses your question. but it does state that an eligible student who receives a grant under this article may not receive another grant until 1 calendar year after he or she completes the short-term credential program for which the prior grant was awarded. So it's where they've received one credential, but then they have to wait.
Then they could get a second one
calendar
and a
year.
third one and a
Right.
fourth one, the way I read that. And so I would hope that we would set a limit on it, perhaps of 2. And if you're telling me that that can be done in the rules that are established, I'm okay with that.
I think that would be the case, and this would be, once again, it falls in the laps of the administrator, the Alabama Community College System towards that. I think the desire is to try to help these students, eligible students, then achieve that credential that will now get them into the workforce.
Exactly.
Now, if they become extra credentialed in a way that they have more than one credential, that's great. It may actually up their pay along the way.
Yeah, and well, you know as well as I do, even when you're at a 4-year institution. I mean, I remember when I was at the newspaper, I used to help to supervise interns, and most of them would be in their senior year, and it would be a sad day when they would decide, this ain't for me. And then you're going back to school, you know, when you've already completed almost 4 years, and you learn that this is really not something that I want to do. So I don't have a problem with someone getting a second grant, you know, if they learn that that first field is not one that they really want to be in, but I don't think that we ought to fund them for 3 and 4 years. So, and the reason for that is because we need to maximize this effort and give as many people as possible an opportunity to benefit from this program.
Right. You make a very valid point. The one thing, and not to I guess, beat the stick in the mud, so to speak, with what you just shared, but that is, you probably have heard of stackable credentials.
Yes.
And so this might be something, so to answer a little bit of what you were saying, you know, could they come back and get another? Sometimes it's not necessarily where they're changing fields, it's maybe in the field itself in a general realm, but where they are becoming, I use the word extra credentialed, in a way that now they expand, that is their expertise in that realm, that they continue to move up with stackable credentials.
That's a good point. I promised you I'd be brief. Let's see how it works. We can always come back and amend this if we need to.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chair thanks the lady. The question for the body now is final passage of SB 175. Clerk will unlock the machines and the members will vote.
It's going to be dispersed, and how will people know about it?
Well,
Just get it in properly.
Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes, 102 ayes, 0 nays. SB 175 has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members of the body.
Thank you, gentlemen. Clerk, call the next bill.
On page 66 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 111 by Senator Bell, relating to Talladega College.
Dr. Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It is hard to hear in here, Mr. Speaker. Thank you so much. Senate Bill 111, it makes an appropriation of $1,069,234 from the Educational Trust Fund to Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. This is for the support and maintenance of educational programs of the institution. This is for the fiscal year ending in September the 30th of 2024. It provides that the appropriation is subject to certain provisions of the Code of Alabama 1975, which requires an audit, an operational plan, and a financial statement. Oh, thank you. I call for the BIRO. Come on.
All right.
I got it.
You can tell Dr. Boyd has been here a while. She knows when to ask for a vote. Clerk, unlock the machines to record the votes. Reminding members we got to have 70 votes. There's got to be 70 votes on this bill. That'll work. 103 ayes, 0 nays. BR is adopted. Dr. Boyd.
Thank you. I move for final passage.
That is the question's final passage. That's questions. Final passage of SB 111. Clerk will unlock the machine and members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the votes. 97 ayes, 0 nays. SB 111 has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House.
Thank the lady. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 66 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 262 by Senator Beasley relating to Tuskegee University.
Representative Warren, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 262 for Tuskegee University. It makes an appropriation of $13,651.43 from the Educational Trust Fund for Tuskegee University. Of this $13 million, $2 million goes to agricultural research. With that said, Mr. Speaker, I ask for the BRR.
That is question for the body is adoption of the BRR. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. BR has been adopted. Representative Warren.
I now ask for final approval.
That is questions. Final passage of SB 262. Clerk will unlock the machines and members will vote. Clerk will lock the machines, record the votes. 99 ayes, 0 nays. The bill has passed.
Thank you so much.
Thank the lady. Clerk, call next bill on special order.
On page 67, Senate Bill number 93 by Senator Hovey relating to Southern Preparatory Academy.
Chairman Oliver, you're recognized.
It is my pleasure today to come and ask you to support Lyman Ward Military Institute, which has since been renamed to Southern Preparatory. Southern Preparatory Academy in Camp Hill, Alabama is built on academic achievement, leadership, and character development. And at this time, I would like to ask for the BR.
It is questions. Adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock the machine and members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the votes. 102 ayes, 0 nays. BR is adopted. Chairman Oliver.
Final passage, please.
That is questions. Final passage of SB 93. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the votes. 99 ayes, 0 nays. SB 93 has passed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and body.
Thank you, gentlemen. Clerk, call next bill.
On page 67 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 269 by Senator Orr relating to the K-12 Capital Grant Program.
Chairman Garrett, you're.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a bill that we've discussed, I think, with both caucuses, and we've also made several discussions just in the general conversations about the K-12 grant program that will reside with the Lieutenant Governor's office to administer. If you recall, what the governor did in the budget was to set aside $150 million of grants for K through 12. And what we've done, what the Senate did, and what we have done, continue to do in the House, is to shift that funding to under the responsibility of the Lieutenant Governor's office. And there's a program been established that will determine how those grants are received. Each grant application would be up to $5 million for a particular project. Each grant application will be based on a sliding scale that include needs and also the ability of a local community to provide matching funds. It would also require the signature on each application of the affected senator and the affected House member. And the idea would be that this fund could be utilized to implement projects sooner than we could if we did it the conventional way by putting it through the State Department or some other vehicle. And the other point to this bill is that we believe it would be helpful, most helpful to systems in the rural areas, the ones that have a difficulty with local funding and maybe getting it through the traditional capital project. So with that, Mr. Speaker, we have I'll offer the BIR.
That is question adoption of the BIR. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Ringo, Representative McCampbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I know our intent is to make sure this is handled in an equitable manner. Am I correct?
That's right.
And okay, how do we deal with that equity? You know, that's what I want to know. I live in the Black Belt. The Black Belt is highly minority area. Therefore, it is highly a democratic area. And what I've stated here a little bit ago is that, you know, I'm a representative for the whole state. You know, so as I deal with that, I want to make sure that the opportunities for the whole state are there and equitable. So how are we going to ensure that in this particular instance? Because I don't know, maybe I didn't see the safeguards that would make sure that projects that apply and would be given a fair shake over in West Alabama, down up in Northeast Alabama, you know, all the way down into Wiregrass, even down in Baldwin County. You know, Baldwin County is a very affluent area. But if we're going to be giving out these kind of projects, everybody should be able to benefit in it. So how are we going to do that?
So thank you for the question. There'll be a portal, an online portal set up where people can make grant applications. And the criteria in the bill says the Office of Lieutenant Governor shall evaluate grant proposals based upon the following criteria. Number one, the total amount that's available, because it's a certain pot of money, and it's $5 million per grant proposal max. The purposes for what they're intended for. He will consider the availability of matching funds, but there's not a required match of more than 35% of the total cost of the project. So the expectation would be, under this sliding scale that we'll mention in a minute, if a system is able to provide 35% of a local match, they would have to do that to get a grant. Some systems can't do that. So if you're not able to make that local match, that would be a consideration. Another would be the extent to which the grant proposals benefit eligible K-12 entities in each geographic area of the state. Understand the number of students and school systems located with each area, a geographic area, vary throughout the state. The Office of Lieutenant Governor shall utilize a sliding scale of matching requirements for grant proposals, taking into consideration the financial capacity of eligible K-12 entity to provide matching funds. The office shall ensure that grant proposals from K-12 entities with considerable populations of at-risk students receive priority consideration for review. So this is specifically designed for systems that, under the current model, where you get, for example, we have in the budget, the supplemental, a $360 million fund for inflationary capital, and every entity will share into that based upon the percentage of the formula you got under the PSC bond issue. And of course, under the A&T funds that we have, that's based upon, you know, a certain formula. This is not formula driven. It's basically a pot of money that's basically there giving priority to those systems that don't have the ability to provide the local funds are able to benefit from the share they get from those other formulas. So that's the intent. And so I would expect that the area that you described, the Black Belt, and certainly some other areas around the state, in the rural areas that have these same issues and concerns, would be given a priority.
You know, and there are some urban areas that would have these type needs and have these concerns as well. And, you know, so I kind of just want to make sure that we are communicating to the people that are actually doing, you know, the distribution of the funds that we are giving to them and allowing them to use, that our intent is to help everybody.
Well, when this idea first came up, and Senator Orr and I discussed this together and agreed this would be a good plan going forward, but immediately began hearing concerns from House members that because the Lieutenant Governor presides over the Senate and he's close to the senators, that all the funding would go to where the senators wanted it. And actually, we specifically set this up so it's a portal where you're making the application, it's objective criteria, there's a sliding scale type thing. The amendment that you'll see coming later will basically say that each proposal, each application has to have the signature of a House member and a senator to be making that request legitimate. So I think it's as objective as we can. It's not a situation where, I mean, I've known Lieutenant Governor for 20-something years, but it's not the situation where I could go up and say, hey, I need something for my district. He's gonna have a process and a criteria. If I don't meet the criteria, I can't get a senator to support me on whatever. Even if I got a senator to support me on an application, if I don't meet the criteria, I would not be given priority.
Okay, and not to doubt you. Now, not to doubt.
We've had this discussion already.
We've had, yeah, we've had it already. But not to doubt you. But the thing that, and I'm standing here in the gap. That's what I'm doing. I'm standing in the gap right now, because I do want to make sure that this is not a politically driven expenditure. I want to make sure, because, you know, you and I probably agree on a whole lot more things than we disagree on, but the thing about it, when we are giving people money to expend, then we just need to communicate what our real desires are to those that we are entrusting to have the same character that we have. So that's the only reason I'm coming down here on this one. I agree with it, but I do want to communicate that.
Well, and I hope you see in the bill we've tried to address what you're talking about.
Yes.
This is specifically for that reason, that purpose, because we understood that if the money just went as it normally would go, it would get distributed by formula, and that wouldn't help some of these areas that really need the help. So that's the spirit of the bill and the legislation, and certainly welcome your support.
And hopefully my being here at the mic now is communicating that message for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good deal.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Marion, Representative Estes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Chairman Garrett, I just wanted to thank you for bringing this bill. I'm very excited about the possibilities of what it could do, including in my district. I'm confident in the safeguards that has been built into the legislation to make sure there's an equal and fair distribution across all parts of our state. So I appreciate you bringing it. I appreciate the spirit with which you bring it, and I look forward to supporting it today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Macon, Representative Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I've been to the mic a little bit, and Danny just told me I'm putting too much walking on my hips, so I probably need to stop right now, okay? But, you know, education is my thing, and I want to make sure I understand what's going on, because so often we have so many programs and opportunities out here that our people really don't know about. So one of my questions to you, what's the awareness factor? What's the communication? How will our K-12 institutions know about all this?
Well, that's where I think the representatives and the senators have to be proactive, because the applications only happen if they apply. So it's really incumbent upon the legislators to go to their districts and be in communication and identify those needs.
Okay, so that's on us. The next thing, what's the total amount available for this grant?
Well, right now in the supplemental, when the governor started the initial program, it was $150 million. When the Senate did their thing and they cut the rebate, they took the number to $180 million. Now with the House bill taking the rebate up and doing some other adjustments, this fund right now would have about $104 million in it.
104. Okay. What's the maximum grant?
$5 million. So it can be up to $5 million per project.
Okay. And the match, did I hear you say 35% on that?
I haven't seen this. There will be a sliding scale that will be basic upon, depending on the criteria and what the application says, what the required match would be from the local community. In no case would that be more than 35%, but it could be much lower. Could be.
Yeah, because 35% really seems to be a little large. Because see, and like I said, in a lot of our counties, we have little or no local revenue.
Yeah. Now this would just say that even like in a more affluent area, they would have to provide no more than 35% local match. But they would, again, as I mentioned earlier, the bill gives priorities to other situations. So.
And this will be administered by the Lieutenant Governor's office.
That's right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Hulsey. Be the fourth person to speak on the BR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, Representative Garrett. I really just wanted to tell you that I appreciate your willingness to bring this and look forward to supporting it. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
Question for the body's adoption of the BR. Clerk will unlock the machines and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 100 ayes, 0 nays. BR has been adopted. Chairman Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now I would move for adoption of the sub. We have two amendments.
Okay, you got two. I'm showing two subs. You care to explain the first one?
Two amendments? Yes. So which is the first amendment? I'm not sure which is first. The First Amendment would basically add the provision on line 85, page 4, that all applications for grants shall be endorsed by a member of the Senate and House of Representatives from the affected delegation in order to be considered. So in other words, this is basically ensuring that each project and each application is supported by both the House member and the senator in whose district that project resides.
Okay, you've heard the sponsor's explanation. Representative Hall, you want to speak on the amendment or the bill? Okay. Ms. Moore, amendment of the bill? Bill? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Question for the body's adoption of the amendment. Okay. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Ringo, Representative McCampbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One quick question. You said each senator and House member has to sign off. In the case I'm in one delegation, how will we handle it in that delegation?
No, not each. If you have a project for a school.
For a school that's in only your district.
Yeah, the senator and the House member for that project.
For that particular district.
That's right.
That block. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Question for the body is passage of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machine and members vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. The amendment has passed. Chairman Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have another amendment, and this amendment, you need to, go ahead.
This is a committee amendment.
Committee
Okay,
amendment.
go ahead and explain your amendment, please.
A committee amendment would basically add to the eligible K through 12 entity any public school in operation at the current fiscal year, the Alabama School of Math and Science, the Alabama School of Fine Arts, the Alabama School for Cyber Technology and Engineering, and that portion of the Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind providing appropriate elementary, secondary instruction, and may include the Department of Youth Services School District as well. So again, the original formula that was traditionally established does not include these schools. We've added the specialty schools and the School of Deaf and Blind and the Department of Youth Services School to be eligible to apply for these grants.
Okay, you've heard the explanation of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine. Record the vote. 103 ayes, 0 nays. The amendment is adopted. Chairman Garrett.
Mr. Speaker, I move for final passage.
Chair recognizes a lady from Jefferson, Representative Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand with that, the First Amendment where it would be signed off by each House and Senate member where the facility is physically located, but could there be given any knowledge to that delegation? For instance, if it was, say, Lawson State, even though that's not physically in my district, but it is one of the schools that our delegation would be concerned about. So how will we know what's going on? Could any information be given to us because it's in in the county that we represent?
Yeah, let me read. There are some reporting requirements. Let's see. So any entity providing funds shall report with the Lieutenant Governor within 1 year following receipt of the funds.
What page is that?
This is on page 4. The Department of Examiners shall examine compliance with that. E, the Office of Lieutenant Governor shall design and distribute grant proposal instrument to the State Department of Education to make available. Office shall maintain electronic records of all proposals. I don't see a specific thing addressing your point, which is how do we know? I mean, I guess the information would be public information. We could certainly.
But how would I know to look for it? Because you got the only people that are associated with it. And see, that's a lot that happens throughout with monies that we allocate. And people will say, well, this happened, that happened. But all of us never have access or even know to look to see if something has been done, since it's limited knowledge just to those representatives that where the facility is physically located. You know, at some point in time, and I think it's been expounded upon before, is that we don't know how funds, if they're used effectively or not, because it's only the information goes to a limited source. And we got to have some kind of, I guess, crystal ball to know to go in to look. I guess if something would go out with the list of projects that's been approved, maybe then that could help us out and we get some information and we could look at those projects that have been approved in the area, even though the facility is not located specifically in my district, but it might be in the county in which I represent.
So I understand that they're already going to work, they're working with someone to develop an online portal that would
Okay.
have that information. I will just ask them to add to that online portal the reporting information.
Yeah.
So that you can access that. Now the question is, I'm sure we can get a copy of that. I mean, I think we can deal with that for the administrative.
Yeah, because we need to, so we can know how effective, especially with this program that we're putting in place, to know how effective it was. And did we accomplish our goal? But without us getting feedback, we don't ever know. And with just one or two people getting the feedback, that's not sufficient for us to continue to sit here and vote yes on things when we don't know if they provided a benefit to the citizens of this state in the first place. But if you could
that's the point
add
I'll take,
to that point, you know, to make sure there's some way we can know before the next budget year or once this expires, well, should we do it again?
Right.
And we could say, well, this is what we accomplished when we did it the last time.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman here, who is too
Yes.
many pieces of paper dealing with this. I've tried the computer, and I'm back to a piece of paper. But anyway, did I understand you to say that this program started in the governor's office, or it started with the governor?
The governor had $150 million allocated to a K through 12 grant program that I believe was administered by the State Department of Education, which has been traditionally the way we do those projects. Now, our thought was, in addition to that $150 million, there's also this $360 million that they had appropriated for this capital improvement program.
Who is they?
The governor.
Okay.
So it really is.
How much was that?
It was $360 million for capital and inflationary funds. So basically, the idea was that schools that had began projects or had needs last year, now there's been inflation and these costs, these projects have gone gone up a lot. So a lot of that supplemental money the governor had was set aside to account for the increasing cost of projects that were on underway. Now, you still were going to be able to get part of that money, but our point was, if you've got $360 million and another $150 million, how much can one organization, the State Department, effectively handle or manage? So our thought was, let's take that $150 million and move it to a different vehicle and take the focus to these areas that are not going to benefit necessarily from the traditional formulas. So, and that happened in the Senate bill. We changed that 150 from the previous.
So let me
concept.
stop you there. The $360 million will stay with the State Department of Education under the.
Well, what's going to happen? That money will be available to all the school systems based upon their PSC bond formula. So each somebody gets their share.
All right.
So that's going to continue. This 150 was going to be a grant program that they would also administer. We moved that grant program to the Office of Lieutenant Governor to address the needs as I discussed in this bill.
And the purpose of that, or why was that?
We believe that this would be, number one, a more effective way to address the needs of these areas that really don't benefit from the formula. Number two, it would allow for more legislative, proactive input. You got a senator and a House member basically going to the Lieutenant Governor with an application process that is with clear criteria, as unbiased as we can make it, but it's there. We think it was more efficient and a more effective way to get the money where it needs to go. And so again, the design here is to get it to the areas that don't have the ability to have local match or a limited ability to have local matching and do not benefit from just getting their share of the A&T fund or the capital funds or whatever.
So it is your thought or belief that the Department of Education, was it because you thought it's too much for the Department of Education?
Well, I'm just saying that we'd be adding to them, in addition to all the other things they're doing, all the other initiatives we have, we're adding to them, administer this new capital program, and we felt like it would be more effective and accomplish in a new program, and we put it under the Lieutenant Governor because we felt like that would give us the ability to have more impact, give more feedback, and have the money directed where we felt like it needed to go.
But we couldn't set up that same type of impact or process in the Department
Well, you
of
could,
Education?
but we just think this is much better. I mean, I think the Lieutenant Governor is already working on the portal, and it's not.
Is that based on this bill, or
I think
it's based on?
in anticipation of this passing, it may not pass, so he can not deal with the portal. But he hasn't. He's contract or about to contract, ready to contract with someone to set up the portal, so that we can make this process work. It'll get done quicker and faster, I think, this way than through the traditional bureaucratic way. Not slamming the State Department. I'm just saying that this is just a new approach that we think will be more effective.
I hear you. So the specialty schools, you said the deaf and blind, Department of Youth Service, et cetera, would that also include the representatives, the
Yes.
school,
Yeah.
individuals that
Yes.
represent that area would be included, or
Yes.
would?
Yes, you're
But
looking.
now, who makes the request? Does the school make the request, or is it the individual legislator?
The Lieutenant Governor will communicate to all the K-12 schools and these specialty schools. They'll get information about the application process, and then anybody can apply. But for the application to be considered, they have to get the endorsement of the House member and the senator, who represent the project, the area where that project is located.
And how are we making sure, let's say a system applies, the senator and the representative are looking and trying to help their school, but they are not able to provide the 35%?
Again, I want to clarify that. This does not necessarily require matching funds. The sliding scale is based upon the ability of a system to provide matching funds. So maybe some systems that can't provide a match, there may be some systems that can provide a match, but the maximum match that would be required would be 35%. So a system that couldn't do that would be given, actually in this bill, a priority over systems that could.
Given priority?
They're given a priority if you have the priority is given to system on a needs base, the at-risk students. Yeah.
So, as I said, we got so many people shifting, it's hard to keep up with where we are. I just got a copy of the engrossed version, so have not read it. So if a system who is poor, a poor system, or a system that does not have the funds, those the criteria? They lack the funds. They have their schools. What about staff? All of those things are taken into consideration. I'm just trying to determine.
So it says the Lieutenant Governor shall utilize a sliding scale of matching requirements for grant proposals, taking into consideration the financial capacity of the eligible K-12 entity to provide matching funds. The office shall ensure that grant proposals from eligible K-12 entities with considerable populations of at-risk students receive priority consideration for review. So, if it's looking at one of the criteria, and the other criteria would be the purpose for what it's intended. I would assume that, for example, in their criteria, if something was more educational and something was more aesthetic, the educational thing presumably would get more of a priority. The availability of local funds and the extent to which they benefit proposals in the geographic areas of the state. So we want this to be dispersed across the state. So
interesting. I'd be interested in seeing what that sliding scale would look like, what the requirements would be, academic versus
I'm just using that as an
physical
example.
property.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying the difference. I would think you would have a sliding scale that would be academic, and that would probably get a higher number of points versus a physical plan, but then it may not, because it depends on whether or not the physical part is providing for a science lab
or I would just say, and this is just me thinking off the top of my head, but if you had an elementary school that lacked in resources and they didn't really have a playground or an adequate playground,
that makes sense.
That would be a good use of money, I think, for this, because children need,
And that makes sense. And I have provided funds for schools where they're lacking, especially in the early childhood area or pre-K, where they needed those funds. I think that takes care of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
The gentleman from Hale, Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the gentleman here,
Yes, sir.
I guess the question I have, and being freshman and new, and I'm trying to learn this process and stuff. The first question I have is, Guy, why is the funds only be directed through the Lieutenant Governor's office? I don't have any knowledge about the Senate. I'm all down here in the House. All my relationships are being built here, and and I would think, being such a fund like this, at least the Speaker of the House would be involved in this process. And I'm just trying to figure out, why is it taking place there?
I would like to welcome you to the club where sometimes logic doesn't always prevail. The answer, I believe, and there's some lawyers in the room that can correct me, but I believe the answer is because there's some constitutional conflicts. Because our initial thought was we'd set up a legislative group, House members, senators, do just what you said. We would, among ourselves, determine the process. But constitutionally, there has to be that separation of power. We appropriate the money. For whatever reason, constitutionally, we could not do this. It had to be in the executive branch. So the lieutenant governor is a member of the executive branch, but he's also very close to the legislature and understand, we have a good rapport with him, and we felt like he would understand our perspective and our needs. So that meets the constitutional requirement of a legislative official, branch official, but I think it gives us a vehicle for us to have more direct input, but we wanted it to be not just who he likes and who he doesn't like. We wanted it to be based upon some specific criteria targeting these areas that we mentioned earlier. Well, the answer to your question is we thought about that. Apparently this was tried years ago. Some of the Representative Klaus may remember that. I think there was a time we tried to set something up like this, and basically we're told we could not do it. So,
okay, and then the other question, I guess, when dealing with, as I said, I'm down here, I'm developing relationships. I don't have any relationships upstairs. So, and I understand, as I said, those decisions and given the evaluation, but then I look at it with, on a certain pot of money being available, and even though they said through the states, we can look at the needs of K-12 schools, and it could be, first of all, is it just a capital project, or is it other needs that may be met,
right,
that comes under that?
So the application would actually be made by the school, but it would not be considered unless both the House member and senator endorsed it. So they could, one of your schools might make an application, but it won't be processed unless you and your senator have signed on and said, yes, this is a project we believe needs to be a priority.
Is it a school or school system?
That's any eligible K-12 entity, which can be, let's see how that's defined.
Because I could have a school that may want to apply for
any public school in operation for the current fiscal year, providing appropriate elementary instruction and eligible to participate in allocations from the Advancement Technology Fund. So it's the schools.
So a local school itself could apply for it, and then and you said the maximum grant is $5 million total at a school. But the thing that I'm looking at, and when I look at, I represent 4 different counties and their different needs. And for instance, right now, Tuscaloosa County is part of my district. It's got some growth going on and some needs, pre-K needs and stuff like that. The question if all the schools immediately say, well, okay, we're going to apply, and there's no way that I would turn them down. But then the question becomes, I don't want to get on the hook that they think and I'm getting some money for them and I can't produce, and that's why I'm, these issues.
I would think that if, like, for example, I'm just envisioning if Lieutenant Governor's office contacted me, or if I was aware that I had schools, because I have multiple schools in my district as well, and as you've got 7 schools have applied for funds. Here's what they are. This is my opportunity to say, well, here's how I would prioritize that. That doesn't say that in the bill, but I think practically what would happen would be I would say, well, They're all worthy. We all want to support our schools. But if I only get a certain amount of money, here's how I would do it. Just like we get community service grants. You haven't received those yet, but you'll be getting community service grants, a pot of money that you'll be able to distribute. You'll make the decision how that's distributed around your district. And what I do every year when I get those is I look and I try to see where are the needs, what school systems maybe have more access to support than others, and I try to just prioritize. So I think that's something that you'll have input in as to where that funding would go if you get. But what's important is though that initially people thought that every senator was going to get a $5 million grant and the House got nothing. That's not the case. This is each school apply. There's a pot of money. Maximum can be $5 million per project, and there may be multiple projects within that $5 million. It could be one project could consume all $5 million, or one could be split among a number of projects. But that's something that the schools will apply, and then you will endorse if you're in agreement. But you will also, I think, have the opportunity to say, here's the priority. If I can have these three or this one's most important, or maybe these three are most important.
Well, and that's clearly where I'm talking about, where you labor right there. Now, if each senator had $5 million, at least I would be in a better position to say when they ran out of money. Yeah. But where you say it and everything, you still leave me out on the hook, because then, because the system, when you got a good superintendent, say, okay, they got this available, all y'all apply. And Ms. Travis signed off on it, and I signed off on an agreement and everything, and then it ended up maybe one get it and nobody gets it. Where that leaves me. But then they find out another system they got it. It kind of puts me on the hook, and that's what I'm trying to. As a new person, then I ain't got no relationship to the lieutenant governor's office, and that's why I asked why the.
I really don't think the relationships are with the way this bill is structured. Those relationships are not going to really matter. I think it's really more on this objective criteria and the other things we've discussed. In other words, it's not that he's going to go. I mean, if I walk to him and say, here's a project I want, and it's not within this criteria, I won't be able to get it.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell everybody that asked me, Chairman Garrett said it would work, and y'all need to go talk to him and make sure this problem works out. Because I can just see a problem, because I got, like in Tuscaloosa County, they got some needs for additional pre-K classrooms, and trying to meet those needs, and we got a low property tax, voters won't. So this would be a good thing to.
And I'll say that on pre-K specifically, in the budget that we're going to talk about later today, we're providing funding for the creation of 37 additional pre-K classrooms. So, I mean, that's a different pot of money to create the pre-K. There's a whole initiative for that. We need to get you in the loop on that. So
Well, I understand, but still with that wouldn't probably meet their needs, because because I know all 37 not just going to go to that Tuscaloosa County. So, I'm just addressing some problems that I know about. So here we got this issue, and then they're trying to get some money, pre-K, and say, okay, every school apply, but nobody gets it. Then they come back looking at me, and, so with Mr. Travis, we did it and everything, but we got nothing. What's the deal and everything? So, that's what I said. They hear reports that somewhere else got money, but we did, and they did the same thing. That's, and those are the issues that I'm trying to address based upon needs and criteria and everything. So I don't try to be hard, but I'm just new at this, and I don't want to be the one out on the hook, and everything, because I'm trying to,
I understand. Yeah. I would just say, standing here in these budget chair shoes, listening to requests from all over the membership, knowing I can't fulfill all of them, I certainly empathize and sympathize with you.
Well, see, I'm new on that block, you know what I'm saying? And they looking at me as, hey, here he is, and that he can come in and bring, and, to be honest about it, at some point in time, they expect me to bring some bacon back to the house, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm trying to be in the best position to answer and make sure that I'm going to be held accountable, because, I come from an area where there was a famous senator who's known for bringing the bacon back, and so the expectation is very high. So I got to try to make sure I can be on the table, at least get some crumbs to take back to the house, and that's why I asked those questions and everything. Sure. So I appreciate it and look forward to work with it, but those are, just my issue from a freshman, trying to make sure that the process works, that I can go back and be knowledgeable and, and make sure that people understand how that process works.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Chair thanks the gentleman. The question for the body now is final passage of SB 269. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 102 ayes, 0 nays. SB 269 has passed. Clerk, call the next bill.
On page 63 of the calendar, Senate Bill number 278 by Senator Wagner, relating to education, distressed institutions of higher education.
Representative Van, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. To all of my wonderful colleagues, this is one of those bills that I am waiting for someone to yell out, vote, vote, vote. Is that my good friend, Representative Wilcox? Thank you for the support, Representative Wilcox. And you and I have come so far these last few weeks. I love you too. Members, what you have before you, and there's been a lot of discussion over the course of the last few hours relative to Senate Bill. There has been a lot of discussion over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours relative to Senate Bill 278. But let me do this because I've received so many calls and text messages and for public consumption and the severity of this bill. Let me just bring a few things into perspective, because I would not want the public to think that this is something that we are entering into lightly. A few months ago, there was an article written and we received notification from Birmingham Southern. I've had this conversation with the chair of our Education Trust Fund. Representative Garrett and I have been working very closely, as well as Chairman Carnes, who is the chair of the Jefferson County delegation, and we have decided to proceed in this fashion. We received notification from Birmingham Southern that they were in dire straits and that the institution was about to close. We were summoned to a meeting, and many of the members of the Jefferson County delegation were informed of some of the financial issues that were going on, and they had asked us for assistance. Of course, we listened to the concerns of the president, President Coleman, and we were asked to assist. We shared with them those things that we could and could not do as a legislative delegation, and we also gave them direction. As a result, we began a process of trying to work with members in the Senate, being Representative Senator Wagner, Senator Smitherman, and Senator Orr, to come up with some type of financial assistance if there was any to be given. In doing so today, but not only for Birmingham Southern, but to also address any other issues that may arise that may impact other institutions that may have financial problems in the state of Alabama. In doing so, a few weeks ago, Senator Wagner and I, through SB 278, and myself through HB 431, crafted this legislation that is presented to you today, which, if enacted, would create a bill that would create the Distressed Institutions of Higher Education revolving loan program to be administered by the state treasurer for the purpose of providing loans to eligible institutions of higher education here in the state of Alabama. If enacted, this bill creates this institution for loans here in the state of Alabama. These funds may be received, may be appropriated by the legislature. Proceeds from the loan payments would be deposited into the fund to be used in the same manner. Any monies in the fund would not revert, and as well as would be are not reappropriated. It provides for the state treasurer to award the loans to eligible institutions of higher education that are experiencing financial hardship, provides for reporting requirements by the state treasurer on the operation of the program, and is effective immediately following its passage and approval by the governor or its otherwise becoming law. Some of the terms or some of the requirements for the creation of this particular law, and I'll just only read a few of them because many of you now should have the legislation before you. But these are some of the questions that I've been getting, and they are just simply these. The institution has to have been in operation at least 50 years, has to have had a significant impact in the community which it's located, is experiencing financial hardship. Its governing body has adopted a resolution authorizing the application for the loan. Its eligible institution seeking the loan from this program shall take application on forms prescribed by the state treasurer. The state treasurer shall review all applications. But let me make sure that one of the things and one of the main questions that is being asked of me, this loan does not require the state to give any educational institution a loan, and there is a process that will be in place by the state treasurer to ensure that there is proper reporting, but most importantly, proper collateral, and that there is a thorough investigation of those institutions. And with that being said, there is also an amendment that will come, Mr. Speaker, by Representative Simpson that has been worked on over the course of the last few hours at the appropriate time. And with that, if there are no questions, I move for the BRR.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Chairman Garrett.
Thank you, Director. Would you gentlelady yield?
Yes.
Thank you so much for your work on this project. I just want to say that a couple of things just to clarify, because it's important, certainly to our area, I think to our state, and we understand the situation that's happened at Birmingham Southern. A lot of us are conflicted about what we're doing, but I think it's important that we realize that we are not voting today to make a loan to Birmingham Southern. What we have done, rather, is to set up a vehicle, a program for institutions that are important to our state, important to those communities, that have the ability to provide collateral to help them through a potential period. Again, we'll see an amendment that will sunset the proposal. But we're not voting to make a loan. We're voting to put in a structure. That structure will allow the decision to be made by the treasurer of whether or not we move forward with a loan. The treasurer, who is a banker, former banker, very astute banker, a Stanford University graduate, will be actually negotiating what the terms would be. So it may very well be that we pass the legislation, we have the vehicle, when he gets there to have discussions with the current banks, with the institution, he looks at the information, he may decide, I don't want to do this. He may decide, we can do this, but it has to be on a very slowly phased-in basis. I know one thing that's important to all of us, and I think that's implied in the legislation, that this institution that would receive benefit would have to be able to provide collateral. And it's important that the state be in a first position on the collateral. And right now with Birmingham Southern, there's a bank. So that bank would have to agree to subordinate to the state in order for this to go forward. My point is, we're talking about a vehicle to address some unique situations. We're here because specifically the Birmingham Southern situation that need brought us to this point. But this bill is not about making this loan to Birmingham Southern. That decision will be made, if it's made, by the treasurer. And I support this loan process, I think, for doing this vehicle. I think the sunset amendment we're going to see will be very helpful. But I do appreciate your work. I know it's very important to you, very important to Senator Wagner, and to many people in our delegation and in the state. So thank you for bringing the bill, and I look forward to supporting it.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Hollis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the lady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In the beginning, you and Danny both knew that I was on the fence about this bill. And listening and understanding about this vehicle, and also being a realtor who has done residential and commercial, has built General Dollars, etc., my mindset was looking at, number one, I was a little disappointed that there was not an updated appraisal. Two, that they didn't have enough assets. And then, but the other part was using the school as collateral, which if they go in default, the school will become a state school, correct? That's if it's used. And I do understand that in order for this to work, that we do have to have first position. And so due to saying all of this, and then knowing that the responsibility is going to rely on the state treasurer, then I can go along with it, knowing that that this is a vehicle just to get things started. But we do know that the school as a university has to show all of these documents that I'm speaking of. So therefore, I will support this bill because I know that this is the beginning to get it started.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Dale, Representative Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Gavan, thank you for your work on this bill.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the lady from Macon, Representative Warren, be the fourth person to speak on the BR. Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the lady yield. Are you aware that I think it was 1973, we had a college, Athens State College was a private school that we now know as a state school?
Yes.
And are you aware that, and it sounded like today, and now today was the first day I saw the bill, had an opportunity to even begin to hear the bill. We know we've heard about the request that Birmingham Southern has made. And as soon as those requests were made, I right away started thinking about other challenges this state has faced with other schools.
Mm-hmm.
And have not made any move to make this type of, to make this possible. And that certainly is at the top of my list in terms of it. But Athens State, the situation very much like this one today. The enrollment dropped, they had no students, they had 4 new dormitories, and they were in a lot of debt. They raised the tuition to sustain what they said would be sufficient operating income. The 131 years, I think, that they had been in existence. And even though it was with the United Methodist Church or with the Methodist Church, they had contributed a small amount. I think the other part of my question was, has the institution sought an appraisal? Because I heard that this morning. You know, when the treasurer raised all of the concerns that he had, that increased my concern. One, has the college had an appraisal? Do we have information as it relates to its assets? And then what would be the collateral for this going, even if we use the process that you're proposing?
Property itself, the school itself has to be the collateral. That's number one. There has been an appraisal, but we are trying to, and I think what was asked
I'm sorry,
today,
did you say it has been or has not been?
There has been an appraisal. The question is, we're trying to get the clarity as to when the last appraisal was done and how remote in time that appraisal was done. So I think that was a valid question that was asked. The appraisal was last done, I think it was last year, and I think the property may have been valued appraised at somewhere between 75 and $90 million, and that was last year. So I know using my due diligence, I am going to request, and I know with young Boozer, knowing him the way we know him, he's going to probably ask for this year's updated appraisal, given everything that has transpired, and especially if we should move out of this house, this piece of legislation. So I'm sure of that. But that's where the last appraisal failed last year.
And so did we hear anything about what the assets were as we go through this process?
I'm not sure about all of the assets, which included, of course, all of the buildings. I know one of the questions even was asked of me today was whether or not they even own the sorority buildings and things of that nature. So I do know they had some funds that were in a small amount that was still in reserve. So I know they had those funds, and of course, again, all of the buildings and things of that nature.
So as we say that we set this up to make sure, we know that the bottom line is this being set up today is being set up for one purpose. Today is because of Birmingham Southern. Even though we're saying it is for any school, but it really is because of Birmingham Southern.
Well, I think Birmingham Southern could be totally honest to say that it would have served as the catalyst. But let me just explain for me. You mentioned Athens State. I don't know if you were here, if you remember a college called Daniel Payne.
Let me tell you.
It took me back.
I remember all of those.
All of these colleges, and I had totally forgotten that college sat in the heart of my district. And what makes that Birmingham Southern one of the things so unique, Representative Treadaway and I actually held a town hall meeting. Roughly about 1,000 individuals were there at the town hall meeting, and in doing so, it was amazing that some of the proponents that came, they said, and it's so unique, Birmingham Southern actually takes up almost half of an entire neighborhood, acreage.
I'm aware.
Which, when I really started doing my research, the realization is the issues became public safety, what happens when the lights go off, all of those issues. And then I started thinking about those educational institutions that me and you are now talking about. And I totally had forgot the blight and all of those things that come about. So it made me start doing further research. So as a result, to be honest with you, and I try to be as honest as possible, it was the catalyst, but also I started thinking about the Stillman colleges. We have a colleague in here right here that just talked with me about where he stands because of what happened with Stillman just a few years ago. He's one of our Republican colleagues.
And let me say this, and there was a request, there were even people went to DC, but we didn't, as a state, my point is, as a state, those issues, it did not cause us to come up to support them. And so, we continue that process. But here we are today with this particular school saying that today, now that we have Birmingham Southern, we're going to make sure that we're going to follow through or make sure that we put this process in place. And I think it's wonderful that we've decided as an afterthought, if we had something like this in place, Stillman would have gotten resources, Payne would have gotten resources. That is the bottom line. And I think that was really smart in terms of how this was crafted. Now, the other side of that is that the decision is left with the treasurer. We have not had a treasurer that I'm aware of since I've been in Alabama politics that have the skills and the ability as young Boozer. We have not had that. And I thought he was very candid and very honest in terms of what he saw as he made his presentation this morning. And so we're saying he is going to be responsible. I do think, based on the amendment that I've seen, that amendment does give some help to this. But if it is not him, and it's not someone that has the skills, even if another school gets in trouble, we need to have that same type of person with the same types of skills. And I'm not sure that's going to happen because that's an elected position.
And Representative Powell, I just want to say that's one of the reasons why, and I appreciate Representative Simpson working with me on this issue and bringing some relief to a lot of the members, because there will be, I think, I feel safe to say that when that particular bill comes up for review for sunset, I think it will probably be one of the most vetted reviews that we'll have. Because of the caliber of leadership of young Boozer and the wealth of knowledge, and him being such a learned professional in his field, that I feel confident with the leadership, even in this House, whoever it may be at the time, that I think it will be vetted as such. And if they don't feel comfortable, I really feel that they'll make a decision that if that's not worth it, then we'll make some adjustments, and we just won't move forward at that time.
I also think it's going to be quite interesting if it comes back and John Boozer, the treasurer, says, "Oh no, Alabama, we're not doing this."
But I think there's a level of comfort too, and that's the thing that made me have a level of comfort, because I'll be honest with you initially, and I shared this with President Coleman. I shared this with your president. I actually had.
I haven't heard that he supports this, but I haven't asked.
Well, the lady's time has expired.
He spoke with Coleman. I had.
Question for the body's adoption of the BLR. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 76 ayes, 17 nays. The BLR has passed. Representative Van.
At this time, Mr. Speaker, I move I have an amendment. I move for final passage, but there's an amendment.
Okay. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Baldwin, Representative Simpson. Clerk, see the amendment.
Amendment to Senate Bill number 278 by Representative Simpson.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Speaker. Will the lady yield?
Yes, I don't have to. But
I know you don't have to, but I like to act as a courtesy.
I like doing it for y'all. I loved it.
I have an amendment that I've shown you and that we brought a copy of. The language has included some language with the Treasurer's Office regarding the purposes authorized by this statute, the expenses of making and administering loans, including legal, consultant, and administrative expenses, shall be payable from the fund. We had just created this position without giving them the opportunity to pay for what they needed to do for it. The second part of the amendment is, in addition to the powers granted by the other provisions of this bill, the treasurer shall have the powers necessary and convenient to carry out the purposes and provisions of this bill, including the power to enter in and execute contracts, agreements, and other instruments. That's just language that was needed to give them the authority that they needed to do what we're trying to get them to do. The third portion of the amendment says that no loans may be authorized pursuant to this act after January 18th, 2027. However, this provision shall not affect any loans issued prior to this date. Any funds in the Distressed Institutions of Higher Education Loan Program Fund on this date shall be transferred to the Education Trust Fund. So what it does is it sunsets this bill at the term of the current treasurer when he is done with his term, and any funds that were not distributed, or if we put $30 million in this fund and they just decide that there is nothing worth distributing or nothing worth investing in, that $30 million would revert back to the Education Trust Fund when this sunsets.
Thank you, Representative Simpson. You and I have worked on some of this language, and working along with the chair of the ETF, as well as some of the other members, I do find this to be a friendly amendment, and I think that I have no problem with it, Mr. Speaker, and I accept it as such.
Okay, you've heard the explanation of the amendment. The sponsor sees it as a friendly amendment. If you've got your light on, you don't talk on the amendment. Chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will my friend yield?
Absolutely.
I like this amendment, but I had just a few little questions.
Okay.
The sunset date, what happens if whatever institution receives these funds are not financially solvent at the time? Who takes it over?
So what would happen is any funds that they've distributed beforehand, any loans would still be current because that, they're not going to make a loan for a year or 2 years. But any funds that are not distributed, so let's say they only loan out 15 million and then there's 15 million still in that account, that 15 million would come back to the Education Trust Fund, plus any payments that they've made. So if you make a loan in 2023 and those payments they make payments over time and those payments continue, those payments would revert back to the Education Trust Fund as well.
Well, I guess I'm talking more from the deal that, in listening to our treasurer this morning, and I'm not saying Birmingham Southern because it could be anybody, but say, for instance, we've been talking about Birmingham Southern. If we enter into this with Birmingham Southern, he said we could be in it for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? He leaves in 2027.
Mm-hmm.
Who will administer the loan beyond that period? I guess that's my question.
So the loan would have the terms of the loan as it goes through the process. This just says that they cannot make any loans after that date. So the treasurer would still be responsible for monitoring those loans. It just says there's no additional loans after January 18th, 2027. So all the terms that are created prior to January 18th, 2027 would still be monitored and administered by the treasurer's office. This just stops the authority, it sunsets the authority to make new loans after that date.
Okay, my other question, you talked about giving him the authority to execute contracts. In the event that he sees that this is not a solvent deal and the state wants to sell that loan to someone else, will he have the power to do so? And that's my last question. And that's why I'm concerned about who administered after he leaves. 2027 is right around the corner.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
now,
so that's my...
I don't have the answer for if he sells the loan. My understanding is it's not a loan to be sold. This is a loan that's going to be handled by the state of Alabama with the treasurer's office. If the treasurer's office determines that that loan is not feasible or it's not a good loan, then they are not going to issue the loan. But if they do issue the loan, then that's the responsibility of them to make sure that it's okay.
I understand the issuance of the loan and so forth, just in society. If you have a loan, your mortgage is sold to whoever.
Right.
And in the event that interest rates are looking good and it looks very good for the state of Alabama to make money off of that loan, will he have the power to do so?
I do not believe that that's in this bill. I think this is a loan from state money. This is not a loan for us to sell to some other company or some other proceeding. This is a loan from the state. He is responsible for running that loan and how that loan is carried out. This isn't something where he can go sell it later down the line.
Well, I'm just talking from being good stewards with the public's money.
Now, again, young Boozer is going to be an excellent candidate to be the steward of the government's money,
I support this. So I'm not here standing. I do support it, but I just want to make sure we've got all the variables in place so that in the event of whatever institution, that we can make sure the state of Alabama and those who we serve, that their tax dollars are taken care of.
The intent of this is to make sure that the state of Alabama is the one running this loan.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Rogers.
You keep a copy if you want. Okay.
Thank you. I got 2 or 3 questions. First of all, now state getting into land loans now, but the question is, all right, what if they default on the loan and Boozer's gone? I mean, we use it cap. It has been checked out that camp is worth the $30 million. What is $30 million we loan them?
$30 million is in the account, is my understanding.
How much is the total amount in there?
My understanding is it's $30 million.
That's all. So is that $30 million in there? You can loan $30 million to Birmingham Southern.
No, this isn't just for Birmingham Southern.
I know, but what's the loan? What's the loan? You put $30 million in there. How much does Birmingham Southern need?
That's going to be the determination of the treasurer. That's the whole purpose of this bill. This bill is not specifically for any single institution. All we have done is
stop it right there.
Okay.
I done followed the term from yesterday. If you have $30 million in there, and they borrowed $30 million, no other private college stakes in the state got a dime that can't borrow no money. Now, if it's not $30 million in, I mean, common sense. If you put $30 million in there and they borrow the $30 million, there's no more money left in there to loan anybody else, right?
that is the determination of the treasurer, and that would take the decision making from this body to the treasurer to determine the value of the loan, how much credit it should go to, what the possibility of feasibility of paying it back. That decision would be made by.
Well, do you know how much they need?
I have no clue how much.
Hey, so therefore, if see what I'm saying? Where I'm going. If you got $30 million in the fund, and they need $30 million, and nothing left for any other college to get. They need something, is it?
I have.
And then another question. While you're answering that question, think about this one. If loaning for over a period of time, if you try to put this on young Booth, who's a friend of mine, how long is the loan for? He won't be there for 30 years.
He won't be there for 30 years.
So therefore, but the loan is still there. So when he leaves, somebody else got to be the one to check the loan, right?
Somebody, the treasurer's office would be the ones responsible for administrating the program. So we're taking it out of the legislature's hands and giving it to the treasurer's office to be responsible for administrating. The only thing that we've sunset is we can't make any loans after January 18th, 2027.
Stop right there. Now, wait a minute. You're sharp lawyer.
I appreciate that.
Hey, you can't make any loans after January 27th. So meaning if any other private college gets in trouble, he might have one in his district. They get in trouble, the money's gone. So therefore, you're limited. I mean, the true. I'm voting for the bill, but it's. I know what it's for. I don't want you to think I felt trouble from yesterday by coming with an amendment saying that you're going to terminate it after this in 1 year. That means loan for one school. I don't mind that, but let's be realistic about the thing. It's loaning for one school, which I don't mind. So don't come and put an amendment on trying to terminate it in 1 year like we don't know what the loan is for. In other schools going to be able to get, in other private schools going to be able to get the loan.
And the great thing about it is because we have it set in January 18, 2027, if this is working, if it's done well, then the legislature could come back and extend it and make the decision to extend it.
Come on, Sip. Come on. Hey, you know better than that. Hey, now, I'm on for it, but you and I both know, Steve Claus knows this, I'm looking at it right now. This is one school, which I don't mind. But don't come with the malarkey that we're going to end it on a certain date. So if another private school gets in trouble, they better get in trouble hurry. They better get in trouble hurry, but if they do, it won't matter because the money's already gone. And I'm looking at my realtor friend that she'll tell you that hey, I'm not a realtor, but I can see through that. I mean, blind never met a jet, I can see through that trick. So the real thing is that it's for one school, which I don't mind, but don't come and sell me a bill of goods that any other private college gonna have some money to apply for it. It's not gonna be there. If you ain't put $30 million in there, and I go in there, if I'm Daniel Payne, any other private college, and I borrow the whole $30 million, and it's amortized over how many years?
I don't know.
So you talking about young Boosie leaving off immediately, but the loan is amortized over 30 years or 20 years.
Right.
So he's not going to be there 30, 20 years, so therefore to put it on him is ridiculous. And it said that Now
make sure we're clear. He's not giving the loan over 30 years.
Yeah.
He's giving the money. The people have to pay the money back over that period of time, and it's the responsibility of the treasurer's office to receive the money back that is paid over that period of time.
When I tell me how much is in the budget in the loan, how much is in the whole bill? How much is in there?
The whole bill is $30 million, is my understanding.
Okay, Birmingham Southern. How much does Birmingham Southern need?
I don't know.
Come on. Hey, suppose they need $30 million.
Suppose they need $30 million.
So, all right, what they do need. All right, there's nothing left for any other private college to get anything.
Well, see, the whole point of this bill is it's not what they need; it's what the treasurer's office can determine that that is feasible for the state of Alabama to pay. So they may need $30 million, but the treasurer can say, you're only giving you credit for $15 million. And that's a decision that is made by the treasurer. That is a decision that is not made by the legislature. That is what the treasurer's office is going to do to determine, is this a good loan? Is this a bad loan? Is this money that we can get money back on? Is this something that can be repaid? If this is not being repaid, are we going to be able to have the opportunity to take credit back to get the land back from it?
It was already said it's for Birmingham Southern. That's a foregone conclusion.
No, I don't agree with you on that. Did you attend this morning at the meeting we had with Young Boozer at 8?
I know all about this. I'm actually quite already know. Hey, I'm not against the bill.
Okay.
The real reality of the thing is for Birmingham Southern, which is fine, which I'm voting for. But what I'm concerned about is that in any other private college, say one in Stillman College.
Okay.
If they get in trouble, will any money be there for them?
That is a determination of the treasurer.
If I'm Stillman, I better get in trouble real quick. Because the amendment going to cut the loan off. What the amendment going to do? Something like real quick. So if I'm Stillman College, I better claim some money real quick before it cuts us off.
See, I don't know that 4 years is real quick.
4 years, 4 years, we talking about $30 million is real quick. I mean, you might be more than that. So I'm not against that. I'm voting for the bill. That's okay. I want Birmingham to get the bill. But I also want it available for any other private college that needs the money.
See, the determination is not going to be made by the legislature. The determination is going to be made by the treasurer's office.
So the real bugaboo is how much we're going to put in there. So once Birmingham to get what they need, and for sake they don't foreclose. If they foreclose, who gets the property?
That's going to be the determination of the treasurer. He's going to have to negotiate the first right to pay to have if the loan defaults, if the school can't pay their money, we're going to make sure before we put state money in to see what kind of negotiations we can get to make sure that the state is paid back first. But that's a negotiation and a process that's going to go back through the treasurer's office, not the legislature.
In the bill it says that if perchance, I hope it doesn't have they default, we're the first one to get our money back.
No, that is what we've given the treasurer the opportunity to negotiate and investigate and look at what kind of contracts he can get and have the discussions with the banks and have all these conversations without the legislature being involved. We're telling Young Boozer, you go find out and make us the best deal you can make on this.
Well, I don't think Young Boozer is going to live that many years. I'm not God. I can't say how long he's going to live, but
Look, I'm gonna tell you this. It's like buying a house. You get a mortgage for a house. That mortgage is what they pay you that day. They don't pay you every 30 years. Over 30 years, you have to pay the mortgage company back over 30 years. So he doesn't have to administrate it for the next 30 years. The person has to pay the loan back for that time.
In reality, I'm voting for the bill. I'm glad to find a creative way to get the money. No problem. But I'm also concerned about other private schools having the same option. If the money is not as they got, like still.
And the gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Faulkner.
Hey, Representative Simpson. I was going to ask you about your amendment. Can you tell me real quickly the main is I think the main point of this is just make sure that it doesn't go beyond 2027.
There's two portions of the amendment generally. The first portion was language that the treasurer's office needed to give them the authority to administer the loans, to investigate, to figure out how this would go, the powers necessary to negotiate the contract, the powers to administrate the loans. That was the first portion. The second portion was the part where we sunset it to where no loans could be made after January 18th, 2027.
Okay.
So the loan, if there's any funds outstanding, they can still collect them. They'd still be responsible for collecting them. It's just they can't administer any loans after January 18th, 2027. Now, the legislature can come back in 2026 and say, this has been a great job. This bill has been really wonderful. It's helped our community. We need to extend it. As any sunset, we have the power to do that.
Okay. So you're really putting a little more confirmation, limitation on this, so that we kind of have a better direction and of where how long this fund's out there to help distressed schools and universities.
Right, and the opportunity. Let's say that we put $30 million in the account, and the treasurer's office determines there's no school that qualifies as a feasible loan that is in the best interest of state of Alabama to make this loan, then that $30 million, what we also put in there is that would revert back to the Education Trust Fund on that sunset date.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good amendment.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure of that, and I appreciate your time.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Ringo. Speaking on the amendment. Ms. Hall, you want to speak on the amendment? You're recognized. While she's heading down here, I would like to recognize the Lake Martin Tallapoosa Tourism, Tallapoosa County, Sandra Fuller and Bailey Smith, guest of Representative Ed Oliver. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But the gentleman yield.
Yes, ma'am.
Go down to Section 7 for me.
Okay.
Pursuant to this act after January 18th. So a loan will be in process maybe for up to, I understand that there is no, I've heard $30 million as a projected amount if this was geared for a specific school.
Okay.
So after January 27th, what happens?
So after January 2027, any funds that are left in the account will revert back to the Education Trust Fund.
So when you think talking about funds that's in the account, if we say we give the 30 million
well, see,
or
that's
whatever amount,
that's
whatever.
What, we're not making that determination. So we're putting the 30 million into an account, and we're letting the treasurer make the determination as to how much it can loan. That's kind of his cap on what he can and can't loan. He doesn't have to.
Just a moment.
Okay.
So there's no cap on the amount of money that can be loaned?
There's 30 million is the cap on what can be loaned.
Okay, all right.
But there's no requirement that 30 million has to be loaned. He's going to make the investment based on what he feels is right for Alabama. So he could look at it and some school could request 30 million, but he could say, I'm only going to give you 15 million because that's how much I think you can pay back, and that's what's in the best fiscal sense for the state of Alabama.
Okay, but am I hearing or have I heard wrong that the amount that possibly this becomes a vehicle for the school that's in distress is the amount I've heard has been $30 million. Okay, so I'm saying, so if that amount is loaned out, there would be no money in here if that is the amount.
If that is the amount, there would be
There would be no money left in the account.
Right.
So what happens then?
So what happens then is that, let's say it's one school. That one school would have to pay that fund back because you're going to get your payments back on that loan as you come through, and that would go back into the account that we've created. So let's say you hypothetically, and I don't know that he's going to do this, but
I don't either, and but I'm trying to make sure I'm clear in what I understand.
Right.
That if it's a 30 million that we loan out, that 30 million is provided. by January 18th, 2027, you think the process of starting to repay the 30 million would be?
I think that process would have started. We're not stopping any receiving payments. So it's like you take a mortgage on a house. You get the money up front. He's giving the money up front.
Right.
They would have to continuously pay that money back over a period of time. We're not in. If you look on line 22, this beginning on line 21, this provision shall not affect any loans issued prior to that date. So it doesn't affect any loans prior to January 18th, 2027.
So if
It's
that-
just saying you can't make loans after January 18th, 2027. And the legislature can come back afterwards and say, this has worked out well. We're going to extend this program and do more. We're going to take this sunset off of this program. But that gives the legislature 3 years before they have to make that determination.
We all stop, okay. I think that might make sense. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. The question for the body now is adoption of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machines and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 98 ayes, 3 nays. The amendment has been adopted. Representative Van.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have another offer of a friendly amendment by Representative Warren.
Chair recognizes the lady from Macon, Representative Warren. Clerk, see the amendment.
Amendment to Senate Bill number 278 by Representative Warren.
Representative Warren, you care to explain your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment is just really it's a technical, make sure you don't leave me out amendment. And on to replace line 32 on page 2 with the following. University in Alabama, including any state-related college or university that meets all of the following.
Representative Van.
I've spoken with the sponsor as well as Representative Guerin, and I've conferred, and we have no problem with the amendment.
Thank you. Friendly, viewed as a friendly amendment by the sponsor.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Hall, you want to speak on the amendment?
What page? That was on line, page 32?
Page 32.
Question for the body is adoption of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machines and the members will vote.
Just Bob added the word state related.
Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 88 ayes, 4 noes. The amendment has been adopted. Representative Van.
Thank you.
There was one last final amendment, Mr. Speaker, and
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Montgomery, Representative McClammy.
gentlewoman, Mr. Speaker.
I apologize. Lady from Montgomery, Representative McClammy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The lady yields. I would like to introduce the amendment to Senate Bill 278, replacing lines 81 through 82 on page 3 with the following. The pro tempore of the Senate, the minority leaders of the Alabama Senate, and the House of Representatives.
Ma'am, no disrespect. I cannot hear or understand anything, so you speaking to the mic, because I can't.
Okay, sure. I was saying that I'm introducing an amendment to this on page 3, lines 81 through 82.
Clerk, see the amendment.
And I need a
Amendment to Senate Bill number 278 by Representative McClammy.
Representative McClammy, explain your amendment.
Okay. In this amendment, it basically I'm sorry, I thought I had your cup. In this amendment on page 3, lines 81 through 82, basically this asks for the representation from the minority leaders of the Alabama Senate and the House of Representatives, the chairs, to be added to this committee.
I think this is a friendly amendment. Myself nor the chair of the ETF has no, we don't have a problem with the amendment. So we accept it as a friendly amendment, Mr. Speaker. Reports. It's not a committee.
I'm sorry, procedure report.
So it should actually reflect, the language should be to, it should be stated in that section to receive the copies of the reports.
Okay,
Yeah, that's part of reporting.
noted.
For clarification, let me make sure we're correct and everybody understands, okay? So what you're wanting to ask is that the reporting has to be turned in to the minority leader and who? I didn't hear that.
The minority leader, the pro tem, and the, it's the minority leader, the pro tem of the Senate, the minority leader of the Alabama Senate, and the House of Representatives as the chairs of the Senate committees.
Okay. So you've heard the amendment that the report has to be given to the chair of the committee and as well as minority leader in both chambers. Is that correct?
Correct.
That is correct. Okay, the sponsor, how do you view this amendment?
I view it as a friendly amendment,
Okay.
Mr. Speaker.
So the amendment is viewed as a friendly amendment. Representative Faulkner, you want to speak on the amendment? No. Question for the body is the adoption of the amendment. Clerk will unlock the machines and the members will vote. Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes, 94 ayes, 1 nay. The amendment is adopted.
Thank you.
Representative Gavan.
Now it is by the grace of God, I am asking for final passage of Senate Bill 278 at this time, Mr. Speaker, if there are no further lights or questions.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Faulkner.
I want to appreciate your work on this and that of Chairman Garrett for the way that this has been done. I realize where it came out of and the impetus from up in our area, Representative Gavan, but I think the way this is done so that we're not, the fact that it is a fund that makes loans to distressed schools and universities, and I believe that may have been Chairman Garrett's and Senator Wagner's and maybe your creation, but I think the way this was done in a real positive manner, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the work that was done to make this so that this bill right here is not authorizing any money. It's not authorizing any loan. It is simply allowing for a loan to be made if the treasurer approves it. That's the way I understand it.
Correct.
So I thank you for your efforts. Thank you, Chairman Garrett and Senator Wagner.
Thank you, and I appreciate you for that. And I just want to also thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me this opportunity, as well as Representative Carnes and his leadership, as well as my colleagues on both sides of the aisles in Jefferson County. This has not been an easy task, and while we may not all agree, for the most part, the majority of us have really worked to try to work through this issue, and I appreciate everyone's efforts and us comments and commentary. So thank you all.
I certainly think it's a good sign to work across aisles to solve solutions in our state. So I commend everybody that's worked on it. Question for the body now is final passage of SB 278. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote.
I don't know how this is going to look.
Clerk will lock the machine, record the votes. 66 ayes, 27 nays. SB 278 has passed.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
Thank the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile.
Ladies and gentlemen, I move the House stand in recess to the hour of 2 p.m. sharp.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are in recess.